Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere gritty. Dust in your teeth, whiskey in your lungs, and not a single safety net in sight. You're going west, not for gold or cattle, but for something far rarer. Control of your own fate. In a time when women weren't even supposed to vote, you're going to run a saloon, command respect, and survive. Barely. But let's not sugarcoat it. You probably won't survive this. The Wild West chews people up like old beef jerky and spits them out just as tough, and what it does to women trying to carve out power, let's just say you'll need more than a pretty face and a quick wit. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your city and what time it is where you're watching. I always love knowing where you are in the world when we wander off into these dusty dreams. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't step off the stagecoach like a lady in lace. No, your boots hit the dirt with a jolt that rattles your spine, and your hat's already tilted just so to hide the fatigue in your eyes. Behind you, a family hauls their worldly possessions off the coach. Wide-eyed, hopeful. They think it's opportunity. You know better. This place, Deadwood, Tombstone, Dodge City, take your pick, eats opportunity for breakfast. What it really offers is a last chance. A dangerous, dust-coated, whiskey-stained last chance. And you're here to take it. You came west alone. That fact alone is enough to make half the town whisper and the other half stare. You left behind something, maybe a violent husband, a cold New York boarding house, or just the boredom of sewing lace for rich women who barely knew your name. Whatever the story, it's yours, and you don't share it. Because in the West, the past is dead weight. The only thing that matters is whether you can make it through the night with your money and your skin intact. The first job you land isn't glamorous. It's sweeping up broken glass in a saloon whose name changes every other week. There are bullet holes in the mirror behind the bar. The air smells like stale sweat, gunpowder, and someone's forgotten lunch. The piano man is missing 2 fingers, and the bartender wears a pistol holster like an apron. This is your new home. It's where you watch the nightly performances. Men bluffing at poker tables, women twirling fake smiles like fans, fights erupting faster than you can say double bourbon. It doesn't take long to see who's really in charge. It's not the sheriff, who shows up only when someone dies. It's not the mayor, who can't keep his own boots polished. No, it's the woman in the corner office upstairs, the one in a crimson velvet dress, cigarette dangling from her fingers, ledger open and pen dancing. The madam. She doesn't blink when a drunk pulls a knife. She doesn't flinch when a brawl breaks out. She simply raises one eyebrow and the whole room snaps to attention. You watch her, study her. She's carved her power out of soft words and hard eyes. She knows everyone's secrets. She probably knows yours. After a few weeks, she starts to notice you too. Maybe it's the way you handle yourself when a miner gets handsy. Maybe it's the sharp way you do the books when the saloon's accountant vanishes mid-payday. Maybe it's just that she sees a bit of herself in you. Either way, one night she tells you to bring her a drink upstairs. That's when everything changes. Her room isn't like the rest of the place. It's quiet, warm, lit by gas lamps with lace covers. Portrait of a woman hangs above the fireplace, older, proud of her mother maybe. On the table, stacks of bills, correspondence from back east, and a Derringer pistol with pearl inlay. She eyes you over her glass and says, "You don't want to be a saloon girl forever. Learn from me, and you might survive." It's not a proposal, it's a test. You take it. Over the next few months, you learn more than you ever did in a decade back east. How to negotiate with suppliers without ever showing your hand. How to spot a cheater at cards from across the room. How to flatter a judge while quietly blackmailing him. The madam teaches you to play the town like a piano, hit the right keys and the whole place dances. You also learn things no one teaches in finishing school, like how to carry a knife in your corset without cutting yourself, how to pay the undertaker in advance just in case, and how to pour whiskey smooth enough to keep a man talking long enough to distract him from noticing his pockets are lighter than before. There's a historical thread here too. In the real Wild West, women like Mollie Johnson in Deadwood or Fannie Porter in San Antonio ran their saloons and brothels with business acumen sharper than any prospector's pickaxe. These weren't background characters, they were the infrastructure. Their establishments often became the social centres of the town, places where deals were struck, alliances forged, and politics whispered over shot glasses. And here's your quirky fact of the night. Some madams even offered health insurance to their girls, decades before industrial barons even considered the idea. Still, not everyone agrees on how much power madams really had. Some historians argue that they were still confined by the male protection and approval, that their independence was an illusion built on fragile alliances. Others claim they were among the few women in 19th century America with real tangible control over property, labour, and economics. But as you sit in the madam's parlour learning how to sign contracts and wield influence, it doesn't feel like an illusion. It feels like the first real taste of control you've ever had. You're not just surviving anymore, you're beginning to scheme. The saloon doors swing open with a whine that no one ever bothers to oil. Every time they do, you instinctively glance up from the ledger or the bar, already judging drifter, miner, gambler, or gunslinger. Tonight it's a trio of cowboys, their hats low, their coats dusted with trail grime, and their hands too close to their belts. You clock them immediately as trouble. The bartender, a man with arms like whiskey barrels, shoots you a look. It's that subtle nod that means keep an eye out. You don't need the reminder. Your new role is somewhere between hostess, accountant, referee, and undercover muscle. You're not the madam yet, not officially, but everyone's begun to see you as something more than just a girl behind the bar. You've stopped fetching drinks and started setting the tone. The girls follow your lead. When you raise an eyebrow, they back off a table. When you laugh, the whole room feels safe to breathe again. It's subtle, it's power, and it's yours, for now. Tonight, you're at the edge of the floor, managing the rhythm of the evening like a conductor. The piano man is halfway through Camptown Races when the cowboys start shoving chairs aside, angling for a table near the centre. It's deliberate. They want attention. Maybe they're fresh from a cattle drive, pockets full of wages they'll burn in a single night. Or maybe they're testing the place, testing you. Either way, you slide in with a practiced smile and a tray of drinks before they can start anything ugly. First one's on the house, you say, setting down the whiskey. If you're still standing in an hour, the next one's full price. They laugh, and the tension breaks like a dropped glass. This is what you do now. Read the room like scripture. Sense trouble before it flares. You've seen the consequences of letting your guard down. Just last week, a man tried to pull a revolver when he accused another of cheating at faro. It ended with 2 corpses, a broken table, and a floor soaked in blood that took an hour to scrub. You keep lemon oil and lye behind the bar now, along with the mop. Back upstairs, the madam, Rosaline, but only behind closed doors, teaches you something new every day. Today it's inventory, not whiskey or cigars. No, you're tracking information. Who's sleeping with whom? Who's cheating on their business partner? Who's afraid of being recognised from that wanted poster that keeps curling up in the heat? It's more valuable than gold. Rosaline keeps records coded in careful script, tucked inside a false-bottom drawer. You memorise the system just in case. There's a sharpness to her. She's always watching, always calculating, and the girls respect her with a mixture of awe and fear. You're not sure if she trusts anyone, even you. But she does something surprising one evening. She hands you the keys. Not all of them, just a pair. One to the liquor lock box, one to the upstairs corridor where the money's counted. She says, "Don't lose these. They're worth more than most people in this town." It's not a promotion. It's a test with stakes. So you step up. You start taking over more responsibilities. You handle suppliers, tough men with sour breath and wandering hands, easily calmed by your deadpan stare and ability to quote prices to the penny. You negotiate with the card dealers, checking the decks for signs of tampering. One tries to slip in a marked set. He's gone by morning. You don't ask questions, and Rosaline doesn't offer answers. One night, a regular named Sam, slick hair, silver cufflinks, lies like poetry, leans in and asks you how a girl like you ends up running a place like this. You look him in the eye and say, "By being smarter than the men who try to run me." And that's exactly it. Every day you survive out here requires a cocktail of charm, instinct, and unapologetic grit. The West isn't forgiving. And for women, especially women with ambition, it's even worse. You're not the only one. You hear stories. A madam in San Francisco reportedly bribed a city councilman with a week of free lodging and secured her place on the block for a decade. Another woman in New Mexico allegedly turned her entire brothel into a secret speakeasy for Confederate spies during the Civil War. You file those stories away, not just for entertainment, but inspiration. There's a fringe detail you overhear from an old card sharp who swears it's true. In some towns, saloons offered loyalty punch cards for their most regular patrons. 10 drinks and a free cigar. Absurd, but somehow believable in a place that invents its own rules every day. Still, it's not all whiskey and clever quips. There's an open question that haunts every woman in your profession, spoken or not. Are you free or just less caged than the rest? Some say madams were entrepreneurs, survivors, queens of their key, dusty little realms. Others insist they were still trapped, beholden to male sheriffs, bankers, and worse. You feel both truths pressing down on you, like the ceiling's just a bit too low. But there are, alas, moments, sweet, rare ones, where it feels like you've won something. One comes at closing, when the room is quiet, the oil lamps are low, and the smell of pipe smoke hangs in the rafters like a lullaby. You're counting the till, the sound of silver clinking like lullabies in your ears, and Rosalind leans in the doorway. "You're good at this," she says. You glance up. At what? Staying alive. You don't say it, but it feels good. It feels earned, because it is. You don't remember the exact night it changes, but one day you're just part of the saloon, and the next, the saloon starts feeling like it's part of you. There's no ceremony, no sashes pinned to your corset, no proclamation read aloud over shots of rye. But the way the girls glance your way before making decisions, how the barkeep defers to your judgment during a rowdy hand of poker, those are signs. Rosalind steps back just enough to let you realise she's grooming you for more, or maybe she's tired, or scared, or just too smart to leave the future of her investment in the hands of anyone less ruthless than you're becoming. One afternoon she sits across from you in the back room where sunlight filters through dusty curtains, casting golden bars across her face. She looks older than usual, her hair pinned tighter, her eyes heavier. "Ever wonder what happens to girls like us?" she asks. Not as a challenge, but almost like a confession. You shrug, depends on how well we play the game. She nods, half smiling. Just make sure you're playing to win. That's when she starts to truly let you in, into the quiet empire she's built behind the swinging doors and the clinking glasses. It's not just a saloon, it's a web. Her girls are informants. The whiskey supplier is also the money launderer. The piano man, shockingly, used to be a bank robber. Now he keeps an ear on which patron is due a big payout. And Rosalind? She holds it all in the palm of her gloved hand with the grace of someone who's lost everything once and refuses to do so again. Your training gets more precise. She walks you through the books that matter and the books that lie. You learn to switch out ledgers when the taxman rides through town. You practice calculating odds on horse races faster than most gamblers can blink. You memorise credit scores by memory, judging which patron is good for a tab and which will disappear after 3 drinks and a slapdash poker win. This is no longer bar work. This is survival economics. The first time she leaves you in charge, you don't sleep for 2 nights. She tells you she's visiting a friend in Helena, but you suspect it's either a lover or a debt collection. Either way, you pace the upstairs corridor like it's a war front, listening for every creak on the floorboards. There's a moment when you hear shouting downstairs and the unmistakable scrape of a chair being overturned. A gun hasn't gone off yet, but it's dancing at the edge of someone's hand. You walk down calmly, maybe more calmly than you feel. 2 men are squared off, their faces red, the dealer trying to slide out of the blast radius. "She's cheating," one of them yells, pointing at the dealer, who rolls her eyes. The accused is one of your best, sharp as a knife and twice as fast. You know she wouldn't cheat, not because of ethics, but because she doesn't need to. She wins with charm and steel-cold precision. You step in between them, slowly, hands low, eyes level. "Then let's see the cards," you say, voice smooth as molasses. They hesitate. That's good. That hesitation is your weapon. While they fumble, the barkeep quietly angles a shotgun under the counter, just in case. You spread the cards. Nothing fishy. No marks, no duplicates. You catch the dealer's eye. She winks. She wants you to know she's clean. You turn back to the accuser. "Looks like your luck's just bad," you say gently. "Might be time for some fresh air." He sputters, too embarrassed to argue further. Eventually he storms out, slamming the saloon doors so hard one of them swings free of its hinge. But the important thing is, no blood, no bodies, no mess for you to mop up at dawn. Rosalind would be proud. When she returns the next day, she finds everything in place, the till balanced. and the dealer humming as she polishes her own set of cards. Rosalind says nothing, just nods once, approvingly. After that, people stop calling you girl or barmaid or whatever other condescending label they used before. You're Madam in Waiting now. The shift is subtle, but complete. Even the preacher, who sometimes drops in to scold the sinners, addresses you with just enough caution to let you know your reputation is cementing. And let's be honest, you're enjoying it. Not just the money, though that's gotten better. You've finally bought a pair of boots that don't make your feet bleed by midnight, and your room upstairs no longer smells like mildew and regret. But more than that, you enjoy the control, the way people listen when you speak, the power in your poise. Here's your historical breadcrumb. Actual Wild West madams often became some of the wealthiest people in their towns. Mary Ellen. Mammy. Pleasant, though operating in San Francisco and often left out of cowboy law, made herself a financial force through savvy investments and possibly a little blackmail. Many madams reinvested in mining claims, real estate, or even public works. They weren't just players, they were stakeholders. Still, there's a weird tension about it all. Some say madams were pillars of their community, necessary evils who paid for hospitals and supported the arts. Others say they were parasites on a vice economy, drawing blood from the weak. But you know the truth is stickier, harder to pin down. You walk the line every day. You're not exactly proud, but you're not apologising either. On a slow night, Rosalind hands you a drink, something expensive she reserves for moments that matter. You're almost ready, she says, watching the flames dance in the oil lamp nearby. One day soon, you'll run this place, or burn it down, maybe both. You clink your glass against hers. Depends on the mood. The fire flickers in her eyes as she smiles. You used to think clothing was just for show. A corset, a ruffled skirt, a brooch pinned high enough to distract a man's gaze. Those were just tools of the trade, right? But now dressing is strategy. It's defence. It's offence. It's camouflage and misdirection. Every stitch means something. You've come to understand that what you wear can keep you alive just as well as a loaded pistol, maybe better. Tonight you wear blood-red silk with a black lace overlay. Makes you look like a queen of something no one dares name aloud. The bodice lace is tight enough to crack ribs, but you've hidden a tiny stiletto between the layers near your ribs, just in case. Always just in case. In your boots, another blade flatter than a bookmark. And tucked inside the little velvet bag hanging from your wrist, a derringer with 2 shots. That's one for the man trying to rob you, and one for the man who comes after. Rosalind taught you to dress like a target no one wants to shoot. Look expensive, act priceless, and make them nervous to touch you, she used to say, adjusting the ostrich plume in her hat. You think about that now as you stand at the top of the stairs and scan the saloon floor. You've become part of the visual terrain. A fixture just glamorous enough to distract the drunks, just intimidating enough to keep them in line. Tonight's a Friday, payday for the miners, and the saloon's already humming with the warm, sour noise of men celebrating survival. The air is thick with cigar smoke, laughter, and the sound of boots pounding floorboards to a badly tuned piano. The smell? A combination of whiskey, gun oil, perfume and ambition. You take it all in. You belong to it now. Your eyes drift to the far table, where 2 cowhands are playing poker with a stranger who's dressed too fine for this town. City shoes, gold cufflinks, the kind of face that's used to being obeyed. You file him away as a possible investor or a possible threat. Could go either way. The clothes you wear dictate how people treat you. When you dress down, they assume your help. When you wear fur trim and imported gloves, they call you Miss or Madam, even if they're spitting on the floor while they say it. One night, as a test, you wore a plain dress, no jewellery, and sat quietly at the bar. One man slapped your backside as he passed and called you honey. Big mistake. You stood up slowly, turned, and pressed your stiletto blade just under his chin. The room went quiet. You didn't have to say a word. He left town the next morning and you went back to silk and steel. It's a strange kind of freedom, choosing your armour every night. Some of the girls prefer frills and feathers. Others stick to darker tones and fitted jackets. You let them choose. You've learnt that when a woman picks her costume, she also picks her persona. That can mean the difference between walking upstairs for another shift or being carried out before dawn. You remember vividly when one of the girls, May, stitched pockets into her bloomieres to carry brass knuckles. You laughed at first. Then she knocked out a man twice her size. You never doubted her again. Here's a fun fringe fact for you. Some saloon girls in the 1880s reportedly lined their corsets with playing cards, not just to cheat at poker, but as makeshift body armour. A little extra layer between ribs and a stray bullet. You consider it genius, and maybe a little terrifying. Roslyn has always believed that fashion is a language. Out here, people don't listen to words, they read signals, she told you once, tightening the laces on her bodice until her face turned pale. Dress too cheap and they think they can buy you. Dress too fine and they'll think you're hiding something, so pick your lies carefully. There's a real debate among historians about how saloon women, madams especially, wielded fashion. Some say it was all show, pageantry designed to dazzle men into loosening their grip on their gold. Others argue that it was one of the few forms of control these women had, a kind of coded rebellion, satin and lace in place of armour and swords. You know which side of that argument you'd bet on. You've started ordering fabric from the East now. Silk, yes, but also sturdier weaves dyed dark to hide blood or wine or worse. The dressmaker in town doesn't ask questions anymore. She just keeps your measurements memorised and a flask in her apron for when you come in with another strange request. A hidden flap for a pistol, she once asked. What kind of parties are you going to? You smiled and tipped her double. Tonight, you're waiting on someone. Not a man for once, but a woman who just arrived in town asking after the one who runs the place with the red doors. You. She's young, too young to be travelling alone, and dressed like she belongs in a convent, not a saloon. But her eyes are sharp, calculating. You remember being like that once. When she walks in, she stumbles, blinking through the haze of smoke and noise. You spot her instantly and motion her over before someone else decides to. She hesitates, then crosses the room in quick, quiet steps. You the one who sent for me? She asks. You don't blink. No, you say, but I'm the one who decides if you stay. She doesn't flinch. Good. You motion to a stool. As she sits, she says, I can sew. I can read. I don't scare easy. You nod. Can you lie? She pauses. Better than I can tell the truth. You smile. Looks like you might need another dress tailored. It starts with a voice. Low, gravelly, and too smooth for a man drinking his fourth whiskey. You hear it cut through the murmur of the saloon like a knife through warm bread. He's leaning in too close to one of your girls, tapping the rim of his glass with a coin, asking her where she's from, what her name really is, whether she'd rather be somewhere else. You recognise the tone, that particular flavour of flattery wrapped around ownership. You've heard it 100 times, maybe more. It's not a question, it's a lure. You watch from the top of the stairs, one hand resting lightly on the railing, posture loose but eyes sharp. This is your stage now, and everyone in the room plays a role. Some know it, some don't. You've spent months learning how to guide the whole production without saying a word, and that starts with the art of conversation. Men talk. Gods, do they talk? Even the quiet ones eventually spill. Liquor opens their mouths, loneliness cracks them wide, and attention, your attention, turns them inside out. You've learned to wield words like needles, threading curiosity with just enough softness to keep a drunk from tipping over into violence. And when that doesn't work, you pivot. Conversation becomes redirection. Lies become lifelines. The girl, her name's Josephine tonight, but you know that's not the one she was born with, glances at you just once. It's enough. You saunter down the stairs like you've got all the time in the world, smile soft, voice gentler than a prairie breeze. Mind if I borrow her for a moment? You ask the man, already steering her away before he can answer. You get her out back, where the moonlight falls in silver shards across the alley. She's shaken. He didn't touch her. Not exactly, but you can feel it in her breath. You place a hand on her shoulder. It's not about what they say, you murmur. It's about what you let them think they've earned. She nods, eyes hardening. That's what you want to see, steel, not tears. Inside, you pivot again. You sit at the man's table. You smile. You ask him about his boots, his travels, whether he prefers bourbon or rye. 10 minutes later, he's slurring stories about his lost wife, a horse he regrets selling, the brother he hasn't seen in a decade. And then, like clockwork, he passes out face first on the cards. You signal the barkeep, drag him to the cot in the back, strip him of nothing but his pride. That's what being a madam in the making really means. Talking your way around a man before he even knows he's being handled. You've picked up more than just tricks. You've picked up entire dialects. Some men want a schoolteacher. Others want a saint. Some want someone to be cruel to, but only if they think they can win. You become what they need until you don't have to be anything at all. Rosaline once told you that the difference between a survivor and a victim out here wasn't a gun. It was a story, the one you tell others and the one you tell yourself. That's why you let people believe things about you that aren't true. That you used to sing in a San Francisco opera house, that you once dined with a railroad baron, that you're the widow of a man who died in a duel over your honour. None of it's real, but all of it feels real, and that's enough. Out here, perception isn't just power, it's protection. There's a rumour that spreads about you around this time. Something about a card shark who tried to cheat you and woke up 3 towns over with no boots and 1 less finger. Not true. Well, mostly not true. The boots part, definitely true. Historians often miss the art of conversation in these settings. They focus on the violence, the sex, the drinking, the business deals made over sticky tables. But they forget the talking. The way madams learned to pull confessions out of powerful men. How those words became leverage. Some scholars argue this is what truly gave women like you power, not the brothel itself, but the secrets gathered in whispers. Others say that's a romantic retelling, that these women were no better than tolerated entrepreneurs. But when you watch a judge stammer through a sentence after you casually mention his late-night visits, you know what you've got isn't just gossip, it's currency. One night, a Pinkerton detective drops by. Not in uniform, but you clock him from the moment he enters. Too clean, too alert. You greet him the way you greet any new patron. Warmth, curiosity, no fear. He's asking around about someone you've never heard of, or maybe you have. Either way, you give him nothing but smiles and a drink on the house. He leaves 2 hours later, no wiser. You hear later he went back to Cheyenne empty-handed. That night, Rosaline pours you a glass of brandy. "What did he say?" she asks. You repeat his questions. She listens without blinking. When you finish, she nods slowly. "Good," she says. "You're ready." For what, she doesn't say. That's the thing about Rosaline. She trains you not just in words, but in the silences between them. You're starting to do the same. You've learned to hold a pause just long enough to make someone squirm. To answer a question with another question. To use a sigh as punctuation. And laughter? Laughter's a weapon in the right mouth. Want a quirky little detail? Some saloon madams kept parakeets or songbirds in cages hanging by the bar. Supposedly for charm, but really it was a cover. The birds would mimic conversations. Some say a few madams trained them to repeat phrases overheard in private rooms, just in case a client got forgetful about a promise made in the dark. You've been thinking about getting a bird of your own, but for now you work the room like a quiet storm. No thunder, just tension in the air. Every word you speak is another stitch in a web no one sees until they're already stuck. And you? You're not just surviving anymore, you're learning how to rule. Money in the West isn't coins or paper, it's breath. It's the line between life and death, between keeping the lights on and locking the doors for good. You learn this the hard way, in the tiny back room office where the floorboards creak and the books don't always balance. You're hunched over the ledger by the lamplight, the smell of drying ink and old tobacco hanging in the air like a curse. Numbers don't lie, but they sure know how to whisper threats. Tonight's intake is less than half what it should be, and it's not because the crowd was light. The saloon was packed from sundown to midnight, but something's off. Too many drinks handed out on credit, a few dice games that looked a little too lucky. You tap your pencil against the edge of the book, counting again, trying to figure out who's skimming and how much you're bleeding. This is where most people crack. It's not the fights or the bruising cowboys that break you, it's the books, the math, the slow realization that the West doesn't care how charming you are if your overhead's killing you. You can have a full house every night and still end up broke. That's the real grit of running a saloon. You don't just sell whiskey and poker and painted lips. You sell stability in a place where nothing lasts long. You start tightening things up. No more free drinks unless it comes from your hand. No more credit to men whose names you've seen in Rosaline's black book under liability. You reduce the kitchen orders, cut a deal with the butcher to take last cuts cheaper. You even haggle with the candle supplier, threatening to switch to oil lamps if his prices don't stop creeping. He folds. Then you confront the staff. Not all of them, just the bartender and 2 dealers who've been acting a bit too friendly with a gang of card players. You pull them into the back room, close the door, and let the silence cook them for a full minute before you speak. "I'm not accusing anyone," you say, keeping your voice calm. "But if the house keeps losing this much, the house closes. And when that happens, no one gets paid. Not you, not the girls, not even me. So if someone's got sticky fingers, now's the time to fix it." One of the dealers sweats visibly. The bartender mutters something about miscounted tips. You don't yell, you just stare. Eventually, things go quiet, and after that night, the numbers start to climb again. You don't say thank you. They don't expect it. Rosalind watches all this from the edges now. She's not stepping in, not correcting your moves. She trusts you, or she's testing you to see what breaks. Either way, you don't flinch. You keep every receipt, you double-check every bottle that comes off the delivery wagon. You switch suppliers when one shows up late twice in a row. You stop doing favours for the mayor's nephew when he ducks out on his tab. He complains, of course. You smile politely and hand him a bill with interest. Here's a historical fact that might make your head tilt. Many real-life madams ran their houses with stricter accounting than local banks. They tracked inventory, wages, repairs, taxes, and unofficial payments with cold efficiency. Some even had better reputations for fair dealing than legitimate businesses. Why? Because they had no room for error. A single bad week could mean losing everything, to debt, to fire, or to the town's shifting morals. And while we're at it, here's a quirky one for you. A few madams hired out-of-work miners to count coins and guard safes, not because they were trustworthy, but because they were too dumb to double-cross and too scared to ask questions. You consider it now and then. The boys in the hills work for peanuts and don't need conversation. Still, there's an open debate around how much real control madams had when it came to their finances. Some say the moment a saloon made good money, men circled like vultures, taxmen, thugs, would-be business partners. Others argue the smartest madams used cash like a shield, bribing officials, buying silence, and building alliances with the cunning of any railroad tycoon. You're somewhere in the middle. You've seen men try to muscle in. You've also seen Rosalind flick them away like flies. It's all about timing. Knowing who needs money, who fears scandal, and who just wants to be seen sipping whiskey in your company. Lately you've started thinking about expansion. There's an empty lot next door, used to be a general store until someone burned it down trying to boil turpentine. It's cheap now. You could build a small gambling den, or maybe a kitchen that doesn't reek of frying grease and burnt potatoes. But to do that you'd need capital. Real capital. So you do something you once swore you wouldn't. You reach out to a banker. His name is Leary, and he's the kind of man who writes in fountain pen and wears a pocket watch he polishes obsessively. He arrives one morning in a dusty carriage, peering at your saloon like it might soil his boots just by existing. Still, he listens. You lay out your plan, your projection, your numbers. It's a solid pitch. You've practiced it, stripped it of any hint of desperation. When you finish, he smiles thinly and says, "You speak like a man." You grin wider. "I think you mean I speak like someone who wants her money back on time." He chuckles, which feels like a victory, and promises to consider it. As he leaves, Rosalind watches from the balcony and murmurs, "Be careful with men who smile at your ambition. They usually want to own it." She's not wrong, but you're not green anymore. You know the difference between an offer and a leash. If Leary lends you the money, he'll expect something, probably influence, maybe a cut of the profit, maybe just the illusion of respectability. You're ready for that. You've got your terms already written. And if he turns you down, you've got a backup plan involving a silver miner with too many wives and too few friends. That's the game now: money, margins, and making sure every dollar has a job. You're not just counting coins, you're buying time, you're buying space. And more than anything, you're buying a version of yourself no one can take away. There's a particular moment in the night when the mood shifts, when the music slurs, the whiskey runs thicker, and the voices get louder without anyone quite realising it. That's the danger hour. You feel it settle like a storm cloud just before lightning strikes. Maybe the piano player misses a note. Maybe a hand lingers too long on someone's waist. Maybe it's the way a man's eyes go glassy as he tilts back the bottle for the third time in 20 minutes. That's your cue. You move through the saloon like a wind nobody sees coming, already anticipating which table's about to go sideways. Dealing with drunks isn't just part of the job, it is the job. It's the wedge of ice you keep sliding under every volatile situation to keep things from catching fire. Most men come in looking for warmth or distraction. But after a few drinks, all that tenderness flips. You've seen it too many times. A lonely man becomes an angry one. A hopeful man becomes reckless. And a dangerous man, well, he becomes really dangerous. Take tonight, for example. A teamster named Brock is already on his way to disaster. He's leaning back in his chair, belly out, face flushed like a hog about to be roasted. He's been tossing money like confetti, calling everyone brother, and insisting on toast to people who died in places no one's ever heard of. The girls avoid his table when they can, but he's loud enough to pull them in like a whirlpool. You watch him out of the corner of your eye, quietly dispatching May to shut off his tab. She does sweet as syrup, telling him the barrels run dry. He grumbles, but doesn't argue. Yet. But then a young cowboy bumps into his chair while passing, and that's it. The powder keg's lit. Brock lurches up, fists clenched, muttering about respect and duels and someone owing him an apology or a broken nose. You step in, calm as a summer dusk. Gentlemen, you say, there are 100 places in this town to start a fight, but only one in here to finish one, and that's out back by the hog pen. A few patrons laugh. That's all you need to crack the tension. But Brock's not done. He glares at you like you just insulted his horse and his mother in the same breath. Don't see how this is any of your business, lady. You level your eyes at him. It becomes my business when you threaten my roof, my girls, or my glassware. That usually does it. Most men, when sober, wouldn't dream of throwing a punch at a woman. Drunk, different story. But the thing is, you're ready. Always. Brock makes the mistake of stepping forward like he's testing how far he can push you. You don't wait. One hand to the chest, a quick pivot, and your boot catches the back of his knee just enough to knock him off balance. He falls like a sack of flour. You don't even smirk. You just gesture to the barkeep, who already has the door open. 2 regulars haul him out before he can start shouting again. Later, Rosalind raises an eyebrow at you. Nice touch, she says. The knee. Better than a busted bottle to the face, you answer. But sometimes it does come to that. Not often, but when it does, you're grateful for the small bat you keep behind the bar. Carved from hickory, polished like a church pew. One swing to the ribs is usually enough to remind someone they're not as invincible as they feel. Here's your historical nugget of the night. Some madams in rowdier towns actually hired private muscle, usually ex-cons or washed-up boxers, to keep the peace. But many, especially the ones who didn't trust anyone else, did the dirty work themselves. One madam in Colorado was rumoured to have knocked out 2 drunk miners with the leg of a broken piano bench. Nobody messed with her after that. Then there are the sneaky ones. The poisoners, the whisperers, the slow revenge type. Rosalind once hinted that a rival madam across town had a gentle touch when it came to removing threats. No noise, no mess, just a sudden illness or a missing person report. You've never asked for details. You're not that kind of ruthless, not yet. But you do train your girls quietly, carefully. Self-defense lessons between shifts. You teach them how to use their elbows, how to drive a knee where it hurts, how to make a wine bottle look like an accident. May's a natural. Josephine, less so, but she's fast on her feet. The newer ones just need time. You also institute a rule. No man comes upstairs if he's too drunk to walk straight. It doesn't matter how much he offers or who he is. If he can't name the day of the week, he's not going past the 2nd floor. That rule saves more lives than you'll ever know. There's an open debate about how much autonomy madams gave the women who worked for them. Some say they were cruel taskmasters, trapping girls in cycles of debt and fear. Others argue they were guardians, giving protection and agency into a world where women usually had neither. You don't fit into either box. You make the rules, but you also carry the weight when something goes wrong. And it does go wrong. One night a man tries to lock a door behind him without asking. One of your girls screams. You're there in seconds. You don't talk. You just drag him out by the collar, his feet barely touching the stairs. You throw him into the dirt and leave him to the coyotes. He doesn't come back. There's a scar on your arm from a fight that didn't go your way. It's not big, but it's visible when you wear short sleeves. You leave it uncovered. A quiet message to anyone wondering if they can take you. They can try, but they'll regret it. After the bar closes, when the girls are counting tips and peeling off their corsets with tired groans, you walk the saloon one last time, checking locks, checking windows, checking shadows. Dealing with drunks is exhausting, but it's also a lesson every time, about people, about limits, about how survival isn't always about who draws first. It's about who knows when to step in and when to let someone hang themselves with their own bravado. You fall asleep that night with your boot still on, and your pistol still on the nightstand, just in case. The thing about lawmen out here is that most of them aren't too different from the men they lock up. Badge or not, they drink the same whiskey, sleep with the same girls, and bend the same rules when the light's low enough. You learn early that justice in the West isn't blind, it just squints. especially if someone's greasing the palm that holds the handcuffs. That's why, sooner or later, every madam has to learn how much a sheriff costs. Spoiler, it's usually less than you think. Your first run-in with the law starts quiet. Sheriff Brandt walks into your saloon on a Wednesday, boots dusty, vest too tight over his gut and his hat tilted, just enough to let everyone know he thinks he's important. He doesn't say much, just orders a sarsaparilla of all things, and takes a seat in the corner like a toad watching a rainstorm roll in. He stays for 2 hours, doesn't talk to anyone, and leaves without paying. 2 days later you get a note, scrawled in hurried handwriting. You might want to check your license, looks like it's expired. You know what that means. It's not expired yet, of course. You renewed it last month and it's nailed to the wall behind the bar. But Brandt isn't concerned with paperwork. He's concerned with his paperwork, his end-of-month numbers, his discretionary spending fund, his ability to walk into your establishment and feel like a god among mortals. What he's really saying is, if you want peace, it's gonna cost you. So you do what Rosalind taught you. You invite him to the upstairs parlour. He arrives on time. That alone tells you everything. He may swagger in public, but behind closed doors, he's careful, quiet, dangerous in the way of snakes and taxes. You greet him with a calm smile and a whiskey glass already poured. You wanted to discuss my license, you say, motioning to the seat across from you. He chuckles, just looking out for local businesses. You slide an envelope across the table. He doesn't open it. Doesn't have to. You're generous, he says, standing to leave. I'll see to it the forms don't go missing next month. And that's how it begins. You don't like it, but you understand it. Buying the law is like buying fire insurance in a town built from tinder. You don't expect flames, but when they come, and they always come, you want to make sure you're not the first to burn. Every month, a new envelope. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's a favour, sometimes it's silence. You learn quickly that a well-fed sheriff has a convenient memory. Of course, the price goes up if things get messy. Say a card game gets out of hand and someone ends up with a knife in the gut. Or one of your girls gets accused of theft by a man who can't remember how many drinks he had. That's when the sheriff starts charging for favours, not protection. There's a difference, legally speaking, though not one that matters to you. You hear stories, too, about other madams who didn't pay. One got shut down by a city ordinance that popped up overnight. Another got her place accidentally burned when the fire brigade showed up late. One even got arrested for tax evasion of all things, despite keeping better books than the courthouse itself. And then there are the lawmen who can't be bought. Rare, but dangerous. One rolled into town last year, all polished boots and church sermons, vowing to clean up every saloon and whorehouse from here to the border. He lasted 6 weeks, found himself on the wrong end of a pistol one night in an alley with no witnesses. Official report said robbery. Everyone knew better. Even Rosalind just sipped her tea and muttered, "A man that loud should have worn armour." You start keeping extra copies of everything. Licenses, deeds, payroll, hidden in 3 separate places, one under a floorboard, one in a false-bottom drawer in the bar, and one buried out back in a coffee tin. Just in case the sheriff gets bold or the town decides to have a moral awakening. Here's your historical anchor. Many madams not only paid local lawmen, they practically funded small-town justice. In some mining towns, saloon women paid more in taxes than the blacksmiths, the general store, and the churches combined. Some officers even preferred madams as business partners, less drama, better paperwork, and always a bottle handy. But here's the twist. There's always an open question about who was really in control. Some argue the lawmen ran the madams, puppets on a whiskey-stained string. Others say the madams had the real leverage. Secrets, money, and influence over every man with a badge and a vice. You believe it's both. A cycle. Performance where each actor pretends not to see the strings. Quirky side note. In one Nevada town, the local sheriff was also the silent partner in a brothel. When he died, the girls held the biggest funeral the town had ever seen. Some say he left his badge to the madam in his will. You wouldn't be surprised. Still, you know better than to trust Brandt. Or any lawman, really. So you build your own network. You get to know the town clerk's daughter, who copies all the property records. You befriend the postmaster, who reads everyone's mail whether they like it or not. You even give a discount to the fire brigade's captain, not because he drinks much, but because one day you may need him to aim his water hose at your saloon instead of over it. You're not above playing dirty, but you're always polite about it, because the truth is, buying the law doesn't mean you own it. It just means you're renting immunity, 1 month at a time, And if you ever stop paying, you'll find out just how many rules can be invented when the law's bored or broke. So you keep the envelopes coming, and you never ever forget who's watching. It starts with a whisper, the kind that rides into your saloon on the backs of drunks and lingers like tobacco smoke in velvet curtains. There's a new madam in town. Name's Theodora, or Teddy, depending on who's talking, and she's setting up shop just 2 blocks down from your saloon. No one saw her coming. One day, the building next to the barber's was boarded up and lifeless. The next, it's glowing with warm lamplight and girls with fresh curls smiling from the windows. Competition in the West isn't theoretical. It's not polite. It's not a bake sale. It's blood and bones and broken glass if you let it get that far. And a rival madam? That's not a nuisance. That's war with perfume on. You send May to poke around, casual of course. She pretends to be looking for her missing cousin and returns with a full report. Theodora's young blonde dresses like she still writes to her mother every Sunday. But she's not soft. Her girls are cleaner than yours. They're trained in elocution and dance. One of them plays the harp. The harp, for God's sake. The liquor's more expensive, too. But served in proper glasses, not chipped shot tumblers. Her place smells like lavender, not old smoke and spilled bourbon. You hate her already. But here's the thing, you respect this move, because if you were coming into a new town to make a splash, you'd do it just like that. And it works. The mayor starts stopping by her place instead of yours. The piano tuner skips your usual appointment to play a gig at hers. Even some of the regular miners, the ones who always claimed your saloon was home, begin drifting over for a look at what a harp sounds like. Rosaline notices the shift, of course. She's slowed down these past few months, lets you handle more of the daily grind while she sits in the parlour longer than usual, sipping brandy and flipping through letters that never seem to leave. She watches you one morning, arm crossed as you count bottles for the week's order, and says, "She's not here for long. No one that shiny lasts." You want to believe her, but you don't. Theodora isn't just a new face. She's ambitious, and she's smart enough not to make the first move. That means you have to choose. Play nice, or play dirty. Your first instinct is to keep things civil. You send over a bottle of your best whiskey with a note. "Welcome to the neighbourhood. Try not to put me out of business too quickly." She sends back a thank you card with a pair of silk gloves. You're almost impressed. Then she poaches one of your girls. Cora, one of your newer ones, but sharp and sweet and good at pulling smiles out of sour-faced cowhands. She doesn't even say goodbye, just disappears. You find out 2 days later when a customer mentions seeing her over at the new place looking like a fine lady. You're not angry at Cora, not really. Girls come and go. You're angry at the audacity that Theodora thinks you'll take that lying down. So you stop being nice. You start a poker tournament. Loud, flashy, with cash prizes and a special winner's lounge upstairs. You make sure your best girls are dressed to kill and twice as sharp. You discount drinks for returning patrons. You bring back your old piano man from retirement and promise him all the cigars he can smoke if he plays something noisy. You make the saloon so loud and irresistible it practically howls through the streets. The miners come back, the regulars return, the mayor even shows up sheepish saying he missed your charm. You don't slap him, but you want to. Then you start hearing whispers about Theodora's own tactics. She's offering loans, to girls in other saloons, money with no strings supposedly. But you know better. There's always a string. That's when you realise you're not in a turf war. You're in a recruitment war, so you counter. You raise the girls' cuts by a few %. You improve the kitchen food, hire a woman from Kansas City who can actually cook a roast instead of murdering it. You have clean sheets brought in weekly, and a May suggestion, you start offering language lessons. French, just the basics. Enough to make a girl seem like she's been somewhere. Girls start knocking on your door again. Here's your historical tidbit. Rivalries between madams were common and could get vicious. Some would undercut prices. Others paid local officials to harass the competition. In more extreme cases, madams would send hired muscle to intimidate, vandalise, or even burn down rival houses. But often the battles were quieter, fought through rumour, seduction, and influence. And the quirky part? One madam in Arizona reportedly trained parrots to say flattering things about her establishment, and insulting things about her rivals. Birds perched outside the saloon would squawk, "Nicer girls here," or "Don't go to Millie's, she's got fleas." Effective marketing 1880s style. But not all rivalries stayed funny. Theodora begins hosting society nights. Soft lighting, string music, poetry readings. It's all very civilized and somehow deeply insulting. She's selling the idea that a saloon doesn't have to be gritty. It can be elegant, gentle, romantic. You can feel her twisting the blade. And you know what? It works on some of the townsfolk, the wives especially, who start petitioning to have your place cleaned up or shut down entirely. Theodora plays innocent. Of course she doesn't support the petition. She just wants her girls to feel safe, to elevate the business. She smiles at you in public. Always. The thing is, you're not afraid of her winning. You're afraid of forgetting who you are, of softening your grip to match hers. You don't serve champagne, you don't wear gloves to shake hands, or you wear boots and carry knives, and you built this place one sleepless night at a time. You fought drunkards and corrupt sheriffs, and losses that no one but Rosalind will ever understand. So one evening you walk right into Theodora's saloon. You take in the lace curtains and rose-scented air. The harp music floats through like a lullaby. You smile. You sit at the bar. She sees you, of course. Walks over. "Didn't think I'd see you here," she says lightly. You look her in the eye. "You've got a lovely place," you say, "but you're not going to win." "Win what?" she asks, still smiling. "Everything," you say, "and I don't lose." She doesn't flinch, but she doesn't smile quite as easily either. If someone asked you what your business really is, you'd be tempted to say whiskey, or women, or maybe just entertainment with a smile and a raised brow, but none of that's the truth, not the full truth, because what you're really dealing in, the thing that keeps your saloon afloat while others vanish in a puff of sawdust and gunpowder, is information. Secrets! The kind whispered under breath, spilled through tears, or bragged about too loudly over too many drinks. And the longer you stay in this town, the more you realise that people will give up everything they are if they think no one's listening. That's the joke, of course. You're always listening. It starts with little things. A drunk miner brags about the hidden silver vein he's going to stake real soon. You nod politely while filing the detail away. Later you send a man out to verify it. He returns with confirmation and a smirk. You buy the adjacent land for pennies before the miner even sobers up. Another night, a gambler boasts about a rigged game in Carson City, names his partner, the sheriff, the bank, all of it. He laughs like he's telling a ghost story, but you don't laugh, you write it down. Rosalind used to say that every man carries 3 things into a saloon: a lie, a debt, and a weakness. You just have to be patient enough to find all 3, and you are patient. Over time, you build your own kind of ledger, not of numbers, but of people. Who owes who? Who's running from what? Who can't sleep at night without confessing to a stranger? You have a small black notebook now, bound in cracked leather, hidden in the lining of your wardrobe. In it are entries, like J. Carmody, sheriff's deputy, stealing from evidence locker, keeps it in the floorboards of his barn. E. Brackenridge, preacher, affair with a piano girl, possibly embezzling from church. And Monsieur Doyle, banker, heavy gambler, owes 300s to 3 different dealers, including mine. You never use the information, not right away. That's not the point. The power isn't in saying it out loud, it's in having it. In knowing that if anyone ever threatens your girls, your business, or your position, you've got a whole town's worth of skeletons tucked into your bodice. The girls know the system too. You train them to listen for the right names, the right tones. You offer bonuses for information worth something. They whisper details to you in passing, casual, like mentioning the weather. The new poker player from Tucson, he has a scar on his neck, says it's from a railroad accident. Later said it came from a jealous wife, might want to dig. So you dig, and sometimes what you find is gold. Here's your historical anchor. Many madams were unofficial intelligence brokers. They knew which railroad was coming through town before the mayor did. They knew which outlaw was hiding in plain sight and which lawman was in bed, figuratively or literally, with the enemy. Some were even tapped by detectives, government men, and bounty hunters for tips. In the shadows of the frontier, information was power, and madams had more of it than anyone. The Quirky Detail? In one Montana town, a madam ran a side business renting out spyglasses and hiding places to people who wanted to eavesdrop. Husbands spying on wives, business rivals watching each other's deals. She sold gossip by the hour and charged extra if you wanted her to accidentally mention your name in the right conversation. You haven't gone that far? Yet. But you do run a tight intelligence operation. You know which girls are best at coaxing out confessions. May's got a knack for it. Quiet, unthreatening, always brushing her hair or adjusting her dress while someone unburdens their soul about the property deed they forged. or the gold they buried under their uncle's porch. You once caught Josephine transcribing a conversation word for word in lipstick on a mirror. You gave her a raise. Of course, there are some stories you wish you hadn't heard, like the one about the town doctor who's been experimenting with something in the back room of his clinic, laudanum tinctures laced with God knows what. The girl who told you swore she saw a man frothing at the mouth before being dragged out the back door. You've been watching that place carefully ever since. Or the rumour about the fire that burned down the general store, that it wasn't an accident, that someone paid a boy to start it, knowing the owner's debt would be wiped clean with the insurance. You even know the boy's name. You see him sometimes, sweeping the sidewalk with eyes that dart too quickly. The problem with secrets is that they don't stay quiet forever. They pile up like poker chips, and sooner or later, someone comes to cash in. That's what happens late one night when a stranger arrives at your door. He doesn't go to the bar, doesn't even look around, just stands in the entryway, dusty coat hanging open, eyes too sharp for someone that tired. He asks for you by name. I hear you keep stories, Bailey says. You offer a smile, though your hand's already drifting toward the derringer under your sash. Depends who's asking. He hands you a note. No envelope, no seal, just a list of names. 3 of them are in your book, 2 are crossed out, the last is yours. You don't blink. I think you've been misinformed. He smiles. I don't care about you. I care about who you know. You don't invite him in, you just say, come back tomorrow. If I like your face better then, we'll talk. He leaves. You close the doors behind him and lock them tight. The next morning, Rosalind's already waiting in the parlour, tea in hand. He came to see you too? She asks. You nod. He's not the first, she says. Won't be the last. What do you think he wants? She looks out the window, expression unreadable. To own the truth. Men like that always do. You sip her tea. Should we kill him? She chuckles. Maybe. Let's see how useful he is first. That's the line you walk now, truth as a tool, or truth as a threat. But either way, you're the one who gets to decide what gets whispered and what stays buried. And that's worth more than all the silver in the hills. You never liked the term working girls, too neat, too prim, like the whole thing's a charity bake sale with a darker dress code. Your girls are survivors. Some came from broken homes, some ran from cities that never let them breathe, and others just needed a place to rest before the road took them under. You don't ask too many questions. What matters is what they do now. And what they do now, especially after everything you've taught them, is move through the world armed with more than just a soft smile and a rouged cheek. They're women with thin knives. You started training them after the second bad incident. The first was ugly, messy, fast and avoidable, you thought. A customer got too rough. The girl, new and scared, didn't know how to get away fast enough. You handled it, quietly. The man didn't walk again for a week, and you're not sure if he ever came back into town. But that wasn't good enough. Reacting after the damage meant nothing. What mattered was stopping it before it started. So now, every Sunday, when the saloon opens late and the regulars are sleeping off regret, you teach. It starts simple. A dummy made of grain sacks in the cellar. A few borrowed knives. You show them how to hold it, not the way a man does, over hand and loud, but how to palm it quietly, subtly. You teach them the soft spots, between the ribs, the inner thigh, under the jaw. You teach them to scream, not like they're scared, but like they're mad. Like the fight's already over and they won. Some of the girls surprise you. Josephine's not just good, she's surgical. May, who always plays sweet and clumsy, lands a jab so quick once you think the blade might have vanished into the dummy's neck. Even the younger ones, the ones who barely have strength to pull a corset tight, learn to twist, to kick, to survive. Rosalind doesn't join in, but she watches, arms folded, one brow raised. You can tell she approves, quietly of course. You training an army? She asks one evening, as you mop sweat off your brow. Just want them to get home alive. Fair, she says, but don't forget, sometimes just surviving makes you a target. You take that to heart, because out here, being too quiet gets you crushed. But being too loud, that can draw trouble in spades. One night, trouble comes knocking in the form of a rancher's son. Young, spoiled, thinks the world owes him something just for showing up. He's been pestering one of the girls all week, sliding hands where they don't belong, muttering that girls like you don't get to say no. You warn him twice. The third time you let May deal with him. He corners her in the back hall. You don't hear a scream. You hear nothing, which is almost worse. You burst in to find him slumped against the wall, blood on his shirt, a narrow cut just under his ribs. May's still holding the blade, calm, unshaken. "Thought I'd missed," she says, like she's discussing spilled wine. You stare at her for a moment, then nod. "Get him out of here." That night you sit with her in the back room pouring brandy into 2 chipped glasses. "You know what this means," you say. She nods. "He's got money. His daddy'll come sniffing. And the sheriff will want a bribe just to blink." "Should I disappear?" she asks. You shake your head. "We don't run. He does." You send a message, delivered by the quietest man in town, one of those types who never speaks unless paid by the word. The message is simple. She fought back. You should be grateful she didn't finish the job. You include a bottle of expensive whiskey and a folded handkerchief with the blood still faintly visible. The rancher leaves town 2 days later. No charges, no drama, just gone. Here's the truth people forget about the West. Sometimes justice isn't legal, it's personal, and in a world run by men with guns and money, sometimes the only justice a woman can count on is the kind she hides in her garter. Historically, some saloons did train their girls in self-defence, quietly of course, to avoid drawing the wrong kind of attention. Some madams hired former soldiers to teach basic manoeuvres, others taught poison recipes, and in at least one case in Nevada, a madam trained her girls with hat pins, long, gleaming needles that slid through hair like silk, but could pierce a man's eye clean out if needed. You keep a hat pin in your dresser now, just in case the tradition needs reviving. There's debate, naturally. Some historians argue the idea of armed courtesans is romanticised fiction, that most women in the trade were defenceless, trapped and desperate, but the accounts you've read, and the scars on your own arms, say otherwise. The West didn't reward helplessness, it devoured it. And these women, your women, they're not prey, they're snakes in silk. You sometimes catch them practising when they think you're not watching. Little flicks of the wrist, quick footwork. Josephine even sewed an extra sheath into her corset, said it was just in case she needed a second opinion. You laughed harder than you had in weeks, but laughter aside, there's a seriousness now, a solidarity. They don't just work for you, they watch for each other. They walk home in pairs, so they carry weighted purses. They look men in the eyes and mean it. Rosalind notices too. One afternoon she says, "You've done something rare." You raise a brow. "Taught them to stab people?" She smiles faintly. "Taught them not to need anyone." You're not naive. You know the world still sees them as fragile, decorative, disposable, but you also know they could end a man in 15 seconds flat and be back on the floor with a fresh coat of lipstick before anyone noticed the blood. That's survival in your house, not just smiles and stockings, but blades and backbone. And if anyone underestimates them again, well, you almost hope they do. Every morning before the saloon opens and while the girls are still curled in sleep or quietly dressing with sore limbs and dry throats, you take the stairs up to Rosalind's old office, the only room with a window that faces east. The sun comes through in slow gold streaks, and for a few minutes everything looks clean. Safe, even, but then you see the stack of bills on the desk, the fading box of medicinal powders on the shelf, and the shadow of what's coming. It's not bandits or lawmen that haunt you this month, it's something much quieter, much crueler. It's sickness. It starts with Katrin, one of your newer girls, barely 20, full of stories about a sweetheart she left in Omaha, and big plans to start a dress shop someday. You find her doubled over behind the bar one afternoon, trembling, forehead slick with sweat, mouth clenched like she's chewing on pain. You get her upstairs, into bed, and fetch a rag soaked in cool water. You think maybe it's just exhaustion, too many nights, not enough food. But then May reports that she hasn't eaten in 3 days and keeps coughing into her pillow when she thinks no one's watching. The doctor comes the next morning, not the good one from Carson City, the one with the clean gloves and real diplomas. He passed through last month on a wagon headed east. You're stuck with Dr. Tolliver, whose breath always smells like jip, and whose hands shake a little too much when he opens his bag. Still he checks her over, listens, frowns. "Could be consumption," he says. You feel the chill before the words even land. That word, consumption, has the weight of a gunshot. Everyone in the room hears it. Josephine starts pulling curtains tighter. Tolliver leaves a bottle of cough syrup and a few thin promises, but you can tell he's already half decided it's not worth the trouble. People don't come back from that, not usually, not when they're working in places like this. You sit beside Katrin that night, reading aloud from an old dime novel she brought with her. She smiles when she can. but her fingers are cold and her eyes glaze, like she's already dreaming somewhere far away. You keep your voice steady. The next day you send a rider after the Carson City doctor. You offer more money than you can spare. You don't care, you've already written it off. But when the rider comes back 3 days later, alone, you know it's time to plan for more than just medicine. You tighten up everything. Rooms get cleaned with vinegar and boiled water. You rotate girls out of work if they start coughing, even if they swear it's nothing. You burn bed sheets. You throw out rugs. The girls don't argue. They've seen it before or heard stories. One of them, Mollie, watched a whole brothel in Abilene shutter when 2 girls died in the same week. The smell never left, she says. Not the room, not her memory. Here's your history drop for the night. Disease was the unspoken plague of saloon life. Tuberculosis, syphilis, pneumonia, influenza. They all moved faster than stagecoaches and hit harder than bullets. Real medicine was rare, expensive, and often wrong. Many madams spent fortunes just trying to keep their girls alive, even if the law wouldn't recognise them, and the churches refused to bury them. You also learn something strange. One of the older girls, Annalise, keeps a pouch of dried herbs in her drawer. Says it's from a healer she met years ago outside Santa Fe. You scoff at first, but after seeing her brew a tea that keeps Katrin from coughing all night, you stop asking questions. You give her more money and tell her to make enough for everyone. And then there's the quirky fact, if you need one, in some brothels, madams hired travelling acrobats and singers not just for entertainment, but to spread out the physical workload so the main girls could rest more often, lowering exposure to disease and injury. Performance as infection control. Call it proto-HRM with the tambourine. Despite everything, Katrin holds on. Not better, but not worse. You move her into your own quarters, where the air is cleaner and the windows stay open. Some nights she talks in her sleep, mentions a mother, a dog named Fern, a creek she used to fish in. You memorise every detail she mutters. If she goes, you want to remember something besides the sound of her coughing. You try not to let it show, but the stress eats at your spine. You still run the saloon, still smile at customers, still whisper warnings to girls who look too pale or too thin. But every time someone sneezes, your fingers curl toward your waist where the pistol isn't. You want to shoot something. A fever, maybe, or the sky. Rosalind helps in her way. She orders more linens, sends for citrus from the market, though it costs more than decent gin. She even shares a packet of quinine powder from her own stash, the one she's been hoarding for a rainy day. This qualifies, she mutters as she hands it over. There's an open debate, among scholars, sure, but also among women like you, about how far madams were willing to go to keep their houses clean. Some say they were just prolonging the inevitable, trying to dress a wound too deep to fix. Others argue that these women were doing real public health work before the term even existed. Sanitation, quarantine, emotional triage. You believe it's both, desperation and devotion, walking hand in hand like old lovers. Late one night, Katrin wakes and asks, "Will I die here?" You hesitate, then say no, not because you believe it, but because she needs to hear it. And maybe, for just that second, so do you. You sit with her until the candle gutter's low, whispering stories about a dress shop in Omaha, with lace in the windows and sunlight on the floor. She falls asleep. You stay awake. They come in twos at first, all tight curls and tight smiles, wearing gloves so white they look like they've never touched dirt. Church ladies, reformers, do-gooders with lace collars and 1,000 pamphlets in their satchels. They glide into town like a moral fog and set up camp near the post office, passing out tracts and lemonade like a virus. At first, you don't think much of it. Every town gets a wave of them eventually. Righteous women from back east with names like Prudence or Mercy, sent on a mission to save the West from its own appetites. They stand on corners and warn men of sin, as if sin's something they can swat away with scripture and lemon cake, but this group, they stay. And they start talking about you. You hear it first from the grocer's wife, who leans in over a barrel of onions and whispers, "They've started collecting names, want to take it to the mayor, get you shut down." She doesn't say it with malice. There's something else in her voice. Pity? Maybe fear. You nod, thank her, and buy twice the usual amount of flour. By the end of the week, there's a petition. A proper one, neatly written, sealed in ribbon, handed out by a woman named Miss Loretta Bell Fontaine, who looks like she's never cracked a smile wider than an inch. She stands outside the town hall in a spotless blue dress, reciting phrases like moral decay and blight on our community while wagging a lace-gloved finger in the general direction of your saloon. The town listens, not all of it. Plenty of the men still drink their way through your doors every night, but the whispers grow louder. Some of your regulars stop tipping. A few stop showing up at all. One of the younger girls is spat at by a woman outside the general store. You see the red mark on her cheek and something in you boils over. Rosaline sits with you that night on the balcony above the saloon, watching stars blink through dust. "You ever been chased out of a town before?" you ask her. She sips her drink slowly. "Once. It was uglier than this." "You stay and fight." She shrugs. "For a while." It's not an answer, not really, but then Rosaline rarely gives you answers straight. You don't want to run. You've built too much here. More than a business. A refuge. A place where women can breathe and stretch and, yes, sell what they choose to sell. It may not be noble, but it's honest, and no matter how many pamphlets they print, those women will never understand the kind of honesty that takes. Here's the historical backbone. During the late 1800s, moral reformers swept through the American West, many funded by churches or women's leagues. They believed brothels and saloons were the root of all social evil, blaming everything from crime to disease on women like you. They lobbied mayors, paid off judges, and staged purity parades where men were publicly shamed for visiting houses of ill repute. Some even took children from working women, claiming they were unfit mothers. But it wasn't always clean-cut. Some reformers secretly sympathised with the women they were supposed to oppose. A few even tried to offer them jobs, sewing, teaching, cleaning, anything to get them off the bad path. Problem was, those jobs paid peanuts and came with a side of judgment. You've seen the look in a reformer's eyes. They don't want to help you, they want you to disappear. Quietly, respectably, preferably before anyone important notices your humanity. Quirky fact of the night. In one Kansas town, a madam fought off a purity campaign by donating a piano to the local school and sponsoring the town's first fire brigade. The moral crusade fizzled, mostly because no one wanted to turn away free music and better odds of not burning to death. Clever girl, you decide to play your own hand. First, you pay a visit to Miss Fontaine. You wear your best dress, sleek dark with just enough shine to suggest money. You show up during her little meeting in the community hall, where she's surrounded by 12 women nodding like chickens in a windstorm. "Miss Fontaine," you say sweetly, "I believe we've got some common interests." She stares, cold. "I sincerely doubt that. You care about the town, I care about the people in it. We're not so different. I help people." You nod. "So do I. I feed 20 mouths. I employ 9 women and 2 men. I donate to the school. I keep the sheriff's desk stocked with coffee. I've even paid for 2 funerals. Can you say the same?" Her lips press into a pale line. You offer a pamphlet of your own print job listing everything your saloon contributes to the town's economy. It's not just numbers, it's names, faces, a list of people who depend on you, whether they admit it or not. "You might not like what I do," you say, "but you can't say I don't belong." You walk out before she can reply. That night you host a community dinner. Free. Open tables, hot food, live music. You hire extra girls to serve and invite the school teachers, the blacksmith's family, even the librarian. Make sure the widow with 6 kids gets the first plate. The town shows up. The press doesn't, but word travels anyway. The next week, the petition stalls. The mayor doesn't endorse it. The sheriff pretends he never saw it. And Miss Fontaine, she gives you a look that could melt steel every time you pass her on the boardwalk, but she doesn't try again. You won this round. But the war's still out there. The world's still full of people who want to scrape the West clean of everything messy and complicated and real. You can't stop them, but you can outlast them. It's always a bad sign when the air feels too quiet. The saloon's open, lanterns glowing, piano jangling through a rowdy version of Sweet Betsy from Pike, but you can feel something wrong, rippling beneath the noise. You've learned to trust that instinct. You stop halfway through your rounds on the floor, a drink tray balanced in one hand, and scan the room with your eyes. Not for a fight, not for a stranger, but for what's missing. And then you realise it. You haven't seen Henry in over an hour. He's one of your security boys, ex-cavalry, half-deaf, and slow-moving but loyal as a guard dog. Usually stationed by the back exit, just in case someone tries to sneak off without settling a tab. Or worse. You hand your tray off to May and head for the rear hallway, heart thumping like distant hooves. You find him slumped against the wall near the stairs, breathing shallow and blood pooling under his coat. Not a fight, not a fall, murder. Your mind clears faster than you'd like to admit. You kneel, check his pulse, press your hand against the bleeding. Too late. Whatever happened was quick, quiet, professional. You motion to one of the kitchen boys hovering nearby, tell him to lock the doors, then you straighten and look up the stairs. The girls. You rush up 2 at a time, burst through the hallway, checking each door. Everyone's accounted for, except Josephine. Her door's open. Inside, the room's torn apart, dresser's drawers pulled open, rug overturned, mirror smashed, and a bloodied handprint on the window frame. You run to the sill. It's open. She's gone. Downstairs, panic is spreading in whispers. Rosaline appears beside you, her face a grim mask. "What happened?" she asks, her voice low. "Josephine's gone," you say, "and Henry's dead." You don't say the rest. You don't need to. Someone came into your house and took one of your own, and they did it without being seen. The rest of the night moves in a haze. The sheriff, late as usual, grunts something about possible robbery, which earns him a glare so sharp you hope it gives him a rash. You know it wasn't a robbery. You also know Josephine didn't leave on her own. Whoever did this knew how to get in, what door to use, where the guards were stationed. This wasn't a message. It was a warning. The only question is who sent it. You don't sleep. You sit in your office, maps and names spread across the desk. Rivals, old customers with a grudge, someone Josephine crossed. She wasn't squeaky clean, sure, but she was careful, smart, fast. She wouldn't just go down easy. Then you remember something. 3 weeks ago, a man came through town asking about her. Called himself a bounty hunter, but he didn't show you papers. Claimed she skipped out on a debt from New Orleans. You didn't trust him. You said you'd never heard of her. He smiled like he didn't believe you but left anyway. Maybe he came back. You send riders out, quiet ones, loyal ones, to check the edges of town, the trails, the train station. You ask questions, slip silver into palms. Nothing. Rosalind doesn't say "I told you so," but it's there in the way she watches you. This life, it always ends in fire, she used to say. You'd hoped she was exaggerating, but now the fire's lit. You double your guards, arm the girls, lock the doors earlier. Anyone wanting to come upstairs gets patted down, gently but thoroughly. The saloon stays open, but the joy's gone sour. People feel it. The laughs are more forced. The music stumbles. The whiskey tastes a little more like fear. And yet you keep going because you have to. Here's a grim truth from the history books. Murders in brothels were so common, some towns stopped investigating. Women were seen as expendable, their deaths an expected consequence of their profession. Very few killers were ever punished, unless the victim had a famous name or a powerful protector. That's what you are now, a protector, or you try to be. But what's worse than losing a girl isn't just the guilt, it's the not knowing. No body, no message, no trail, just a broken mirror and an empty room. The quirky detail. Some madams took to hiding coded letters or secret signs in their girls' clothing. Names, escape routes, even aliases, in case someone ever disappeared or was arrested. You find yourself checking Josephine's closet, hoping for a hidden note. Nothing, just a bottle of cheap perfume and a pair of scuffed heels. The days pass, a week, then 2. Every time the door opens, your heart stutters. But Josephine doesn't return. You dream of her, always just out of reach, waving from a train car or calling your name in a thunderstorm. You wonder if she's dead, you wonder if she ran, you wonder which would hurt more. Then one morning a package arrives. No return address. Wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. You unwrap it slowly, breath stuck in your chest. Inside is a scarf. Hers, blood-stained. You don't scream, you just fold it, place it in a drawer and pour yourself a drink at 8 in the morning. Rosalind finds you an hour later, says nothing, just sits down beside you. She could still be alive, she offers. You nod, but you don't believe it. Not anymore. There's a coldness in you now, a shift. You can feel it curling around your ribs like a new corset made of steel. You thought you were hard before. Now you're iron. And whoever did this, they're going to wish they'd never learned your name. When you leave town, it's not in the dead of night like the stories always say. It's mid-morning, sun high enough to cast long shadows, with the wind tugging at your coat and dust already settling on your boots. The girls watch from the saloon windows, faces pressed against glass like ghosts left behind. Rosaline stands on the balcony above, arms crossed, silent. You don't need her blessing. You already have her respect. You take only what you need. One suitcase, one saddlebag, one pistol. The rest you leave behind in trusted hands. For now, because this isn't a retreat. It's a restart. A move, not an ending. You've heard about Silver Ridge, a mining boom town rising fast on the other side of the mountains. New money, new men, and no madam yet to stake her claim. So you go. The stagecoach jolts over the pass, each bump knocking your spine like a warning. You travel with a family of homesteaders and a travelling tinker who won't shut up about clockwork gadgets and portable coffee pots. You pretend to sleep, eyes half open, watching every face. You've learned better than to be too relaxed. The girl with the sunbonnet might have a knife. The boy with freckles could be a pickpocket. You trust no one. By the time you arrive in Silveridge, your back aches, your boots are muddy, and your hat's coated in trail dust, but your mind is sharp. This town is smaller than yours, but humming. Men pour in daily, hungry for silver and something to spend it on. The saloons are sloppy, bare-bulbed, sawdust floor messes, where the whiskey tastes like varnish and the women are treated like livestock. The opportunity is so obvious it makes you want to laugh. You spend your first night above the stables, sharing a room with 3 strangers and a bat. You sleep with one hand on your gun and the other on the latch. At dawn you find the town registrar and buy a property deed, cheap since the last owner went bankrupt trying to open a cigar lounge next to a dentist's office. You smile. Perfect. The next week you rebuild. Fast. You hire local workers, order fresh fabric from San Francisco, and send a telegram to Rosaline. It's time. 2 girls arrive within days. Annalise and Mollie, loyal and lethal. More follow. You don't advertise. You don't have to. Word spreads like whiskey in a cracked barrel. There's a new place in Silver Ridge, clean, well run, with women who don't flinch and a madam who doesn't blink. You name it the Canary. A joke in a way. The girls laugh when you explain it. How canaries were used to detect poison in mines. If they stopped singing, the men knew it was time to run. We're the warning to poor, you tell them, half smiling. If we fall, everything else goes with us. The Canary opens on a Friday. You wear a charcoal dress with pearl buttons and carry yourself like you've owned the block for years. You speak gently, but everyone hears you. The first night is crowded. Miners, gamblers, a few polished types pretending they're not slumming. You watch everything. Who drinks too fast? Who plays dumb? Who's sizing you up? You recognise a few faces from your old town. One man tips his hat, eyes wide like he's seen a ghost. Good. You run the floor with quiet confidence. You don't micromanage, you lead. Girls come to you with problems. Patrons glance at you before getting loud. Even the bartender, big, bearded and stubborn, starts calling you miss, without sarcasm after the second night. But Silver Ridge isn't clean. It's newer, rougher, sharper around the edges. That first week, one of your girls gets followed home. A knife, a threat. She comes back shaken but alive, because she carried the blade you made her sew into her petticoat. You respond quickly. You hire 2 local brothers, former lumbermen, to work security. They are massive, ugly as sin, and loyal once you double their usual rate. You give them matching coats and clear instructions. No yelling, no hitting unless necessary, and no exceptions for rich boys. Then you find the man who followed your girl. You walk right into the mess hall where he works and sit at his table. I heard you like walking girls home, you say. He goes pale. I'd hate for you to take the wrong path again. He apologises. You don't respond. He's gone the next morning. Not dead, just relocated. Your historical nugget. When madams moved towns, they often brought reputations with them, good or bad. Some reinvented themselves entirely, adopting new names, even faking widowhood for sympathy or status. Others leaned into their legends, letting rumours of gunfights and fatal kisses precede them like a parade banner. You chose somewhere in between. You brought your skills, your scars, and just enough mystery to keep people guessing. And the quirky angle? One madam in Idaho travelled with a taxidermy raccoon she claimed was her business partner. Said it brought luck. When asked about it, she'd just pet its head and whisper, "He handles the accounting." Her place never closed. You don't have a raccoon. You have a ledger, a sharp memory, and a knife in your boot. You build slowly, carefully. No gambling, not yet. No opium, despite the offers. You start with what you can control. Conversation, comfort, reputation. You make your girls rest between shifts. You stock fresh fruit to keep them healthy. You give them clean linens and control over who they see and when. That's not charity, it's survival. One of them, Beatrice, approaches you one night. Says she heard what happened in the last town. Heard about Josephine. I knew her, Beatrice says softly. In Kansas. She was kind. You nod, the grief sharp and sudden, like stepping on broken glass you forgot you dropped. She disappeared, you say. Beatrice looks away. She didn't disappear, she ran. That man after her, he wasn't the first. You stare. Do you know where she is? Beatrice shakes her head. No, but she left because she thought she'd bring trouble to you. You stand there a long time after Beatrice leaves, holding that truth like a hot coal. You'd thought Josephine had been stolen. Turns out she chose to go, to protect you. Doesn't make it hurt less, but it makes it hurt different. Later that night you sit outside the Canary, lanterns flickering in the wind, and light a cigarette you don't even want. Above you the sky is velvet and unknowable. You think about what Rosalind said once. Sometimes the fire comes from inside. And now it's burning again, but this time you're lighting the match. You don't expect the first meeting to go well. You've read the signs, bundles of feathers left outside your door, a string of beads tied to your saloon's porch rail, and that eerie calm nook that falls over the street when the traders from the nearby tribal village ride through town. Not hostility exactly, but a kind of watchfulness, a warning. You've been here long enough to know Silver Ridge was carved from someone else's land and the original owners haven't forgotten it. But when the first snowfall brushes the edge of town, an old woman appears at your door just after sundown. No one sees her come in. No one hears her footsteps. She's simply there, wrapped in a heavy shawl, her silver hair braided and adorned with pieces of turquoise and carved bone. You pause mid-conversation, gently excuse yourself from a table of rowdy gamblers, and make your way over. She looks up at you with eyes like river stones. You run this place, she says, not as a question. I do. You owe something, she says next, not blinking. It's not an accusation, not exactly, but it's also not an invitation. You lead her to the back, away from the noise, and sit with her in your office, still warm from the fire you lit earlier. She doesn't touch the tea you offer, but she doesn't refuse it either. She looks around the room once, taking in the maps, the ledgers, the revolver on the desk. Then she sighs. This town is loud, she says. It grows like a weed. You know what she means. There are 20 new miners arriving each week. Wooden buildings spring up overnight. A church is already under construction 2 blocks down, thanks to a donation from some Eastern syndicate hoping to civilize the place. The tribal land runs just beyond the ridge. Their hunting trails have already been disrupted, their water nearly poisoned from runoff. I want peace, you tell her honestly. I don't want to be part of pushing anyone out. Wanting and doing are different, she replies. You take a breath, lean forward. Tell me what I can do. She studies you, long and slow, and finally nods. She pulls a small pouch from her shawl and places it on the table. Inside, dried herbs, a carved piece of antler, and what looks like a river stone smoothed by time. This is for your doors, she says. Hang it. Burn the herbs. Say nothing. You nod. And in spring, she continues, you come to the ridge, you bring what you've taken, you offer it back. It's not money she means, not liquor, something older, respect, you accept. That night you gather the girls and explain the agreement, carefully, without ceremony. Just truth. No mocking, no eye-rolling. These women have seen enough strange things to know when something's sacred. May helps you hang the charm above the main door. You burn the herbs. The scent is strange, earthy and bitter, almost sharp. But the air feels different when it clears, lighter, calmer. You keep your word. Through winter you send food north, sacks of flour, tins of coffee, bolts of fabric, all delivered without credit and without fanfare. You don't do it for protection. You do it because you took something when you came here. Even if no one else in town wants to admit it, the land holds memory, and you're not interested in building your legacy on the curse. Historically, alliances like these were rare, but not unheard of. Some madams recognised that the line between settlers and invaders was thin, and they forged quiet relationships with nearby tribes, trading goods, services, and sealants. A few even offered shelter to tribal women fleeing violence, or hosted neutral ground meetings during disputes. These women understood what it meant to be othered by society, and sometimes that was all the common ground needed. And your quirky fact? One madam in Colorado reportedly learned enough Ute to negotiate a mineral rights deal, unofficial but respected by both sides. When the local mine collapsed 2 years later, her saloon was the only building untouched by the riot that followed. You're not looking to be a diplomat. You're just trying not to repeat the mistakes of every man who came before you. In early spring, you ride out to the ridge as promised. Alone, you bring gifts, cured meat, seeds, beads, tools. The same old woman meets you there, standing in the shade of a stone arch that feels older than time. She takes the gifts without a word and walks with you in silence. For a while, you just stand there, looking out over the valley, the town behind you pulsing like a vein. "I heard one of your girls sings in Lakota," she says finally. You nod. Annalise learned it from her grandmother. She should sing more. You don't ask what that means, you just nod again. The following week, Annalise sings in the saloon for the first time. Not a performance, not planned. She's just humming low and steady while cleaning a glass. The room stills. People listen. Some don't understand it, Tishkanur, but they feel it. The melody hangs in the rafters like fog. You catch eyes with Roslyn, who showed up a few days earlier, as if she'd known you'd need her, and she tilts her head. "You're building something strange here," she says. "Something better," you reply. "You sure that's allowed?" You smile. Not even a little. Still you keep going. You hold up your end of the silent deal. You meet with the woman once a month now. Sometimes she brings others. Sometimes she doesn't speak at all. But there's an understanding. A fragile truce stitched from smoke and trust. You know not everyone in town approves. The sheriff mutters about Indian sympathizers, and the banker tightens his jaw when he hears about your deliveries. But you don't care. Let them sneer. Let them guess. They don't understand what it means to be on land that doesn't want you. But you do. And if you're going to survive out here, you need to respect the ghosts under your boots. He comes in on a Wednesday, which already feels suspicious. No one important comes on a Wednesday. The Canary is half full, most of the regulars lounging like lazy dogs, smoke curling in the lamplight, poker chips clacking in rhythm to the piano. You're behind the bar, running your eyes across the room like you always do, checking for unease, reading the temperature of the night, and then you see him. Black suit, no dust. Hat tilted just enough to look calculated, Puntus, not casual. Clean shave, polished boots, and a gold watch chain that glints with every step. He walks like a man who's been invited, but you know for damn sure no one sent an invitation. He sits at the end of the bar without ordering a drink, hands folded neatly, eyes tracking the room like a hawk that hasn't eaten in 3 days. You meet his stare with a flick of the head. "Help you with something?" you ask. "I think so," he says. "I'm with Pinkerton." There it is. You've been expecting this. Not him maybe, but someone like him. There's only so much success a woman can have in the West before it draws men with badges and notebooks. Men who smile without showing teeth and treat conversation like a chess match they're already winning. You nod slowly. "Well, Mr. Pinkerton, you planning to drink? Or just soak up the ambience?" "Name's Tilden. Agent Tilden." I'm sure it is." He finally orders something neat and unremarkable, and sips it like he doesn't trust anything outside a city club in Chicago. The whole time he watches you, your hands, your tone, your posture. You can feel him building a file in his mind. When he speaks again, it's quiet, but the words are heavier than they have any right to be. "I'm looking into a few names connected to prior incidents. One of them came through your old town, another vanished on the trail. I'm told you might have seen one, or both." You feign confusion, but not so much that it looks like you're trying to act innocent. "Agent," you say softly, "this is a saloon, not a confession booth." He nods once, doesn't pause for us, just pulls a notebook from his coat pocket and flips through it casually, like it's a dinner menu. You catch sight of a name as the page turns. Josephine. Your stomach drops for half a breath, but your face doesn't flinch. You've trained it not to. Tilden watches for a reaction anyway. "Know her?" You pause a beat too long, then shrug. "Had a girl by that name once. She left. Like most of them do." You don't wonder where she went. "I barely wonder where I'm going. Keeps the headaches down." He smiles. Smart answer. He stays the rest of the night. Doesn't drink much, doesn't talk to the girls, just watches, observes. You feel him there like a pebble in your boot, small but impossible to ignore. He says goodbye at closing with a tip too large to be generous and too small to be threatening, just enough to say I'll be back. Rosalind, who's been lingering in the upstairs office since his arrival, steps into the room once he's gone. She pours 2 drinks before you can even ask. He's not just sniffing, she says. He's here to dig. I know. Think he's dangerous? You glance toward the door. He hasn't decided yet. The next day you find him asking questions around town, polite ones, friendly. The kind that make people open up without realising they're giving something away. You send Mollie to shadow him, not to interfere, just to listen. By sundown you've got a list of everyone he's spoken to. The sheriff, 2 miners, the hotel clerk, and the woman who runs the dry goods store. He's not being subtle. You think about Josephine every night now. Whether she made it far enough to vanish, whether she got caught, whether she's the reason Tilden's really here. You even consider telling him something, just a scrap to throw him off. But you stop yourself. Pinkertons don't just want a name, they want leverage. They want someone to hang. Historically, Pinkerton agents were both revered and feared, private detectives who operated beyond normal legal authority. Some called them mercenaries with notebooks. Others said they were heroes in grey coats. They hunted outlaws, union men, train robbers, and more than a few women accused of knowing too much. Madams, in Ginny in particular, were often targeted, not for crimes, but for connections. And the information they collected could be bought, buried, or weaponized. And here's your quirky detail. At least one Pinkerton agent posed as this travelling salesman selling anti-whiskey tonics, just to gather gossip in saloons. He failed miserably because he couldn't hold his liquor or his cover, but the idea stuck. Tilden's no fake. He's sharp, he's deliberate, and he's definitely not leaving. So you arrange a meeting. Late evening, closed doors, no girls present, just you, Tilden, and a bottle of good bourbon you usually save for bluffing politicians. He accepts the drink but doesn't touch it. You sit across from him, legs crossed, demeanour cool. Let's stop pretending, you say. You're not here because you miss a girl named Josephine. No, he agrees. I'm here because someone's funding something they shouldn't, and I think it started with a ledger that went missing 2 towns ago. You lean back. You think I have it? I think you were close enough to see who did. You smile without warmth. I'm not in the habit of collecting ledgers. I deal in people. That's what worries me. There's a pause. One of those loaded silences where 2 people feel the weight of every unspoken threat and wonder which one will land first. Finally, you say, you're going to look where you want. Ask what you want. But if you come after one of mine, I will end you. Neatly, without spectacle. You'll vanish like a hangover. He nods, almost impressed. Fair enough. He stands, leaves the drink untouched. But he glances over his shoulder on the way out and says, if Josephine comes back, don't protect her. It won't be worth it. You close the door and lock it behind him. You don't sleep that night. But not from fear, from fury, because men like Tilden think they own the truth. But you know something he doesn't. Josephine never left your ledger, and you never throw those away. The first time a crate of silk arrives from San Francisco, the girls gather around like it's a box of treasure. And honestly, it is. 5 bolts of dark green, plum and indigo, colours so rich you'd think they were made from crushed jewels. You run your hands over the fabric, fingers slow, as if it might disappear. The saloon smells of new money now. And you're not just serving whiskey anymore. You're serving an illusion, comfort, elevation, a place where the frontier feels just a little less raw. Because the truth is, the West is changing. Not fast, but enough that you see it in the details. The increase in stage traffic, the newspaper boys hawking headlines about railroads and federal bonds, the city gentlemen starting to show up in 3-piece suits, blinking in the dry air like overgrown canaries. They are bringing East Coast expectations with them, and you're already adapting. That's where the silk comes in. That, and the ice. It started as a joke, one of the miners boasting about a place in Denver that served drinks cold as a banker's heart. You laughed with the rest, but you tucked the thought away. A week later you hired a man with a mule team to fetch blocks of ice from the mountains and deliver them to a small insulated shed you had built behind the cannery. He looked at you like you were mad, but he didn't argue. Money's money, and you paid in advance. The first night you serve whiskey over ice, Miner drops his glass out of pure shock. "Is it magic?" he asks. "No," you say. "It's class." The other saloons try to keep up, of course. One dumps water into a barrel and calls it mountain chilled. Another starts storing beer in a creek. Cute, but they don't have your ice, or your silk, or your girls who now wear velvet shawls and speak just enough French to flirt and fluster. The Canary starts attracting a different kind of customer, not just miners and gamblers, but men with clean fingernails and foreign names. They bring cigars in silver cases and ask about private rooms for business meetings. You accommodate, for a fee. Soon you're importing more than silk and ice. You order rugs from New Orleans, perfume from Paris, and opium, very quietly, from San Francisco's Chinatown. Not to sell, not yet, but to study. To know what it smells like, what it looks like when someone's had too much. Information is armour, and you plan to be bulletproof. The townsfolk notice, of course, they always do. One Sunday morning, the preacher delivers a sermon titled The Golden Coffin, which everyone knows is about you. He shouts about temptation wrapped in satin, about women who paint over decay with perfume and silk. The girls attend the sermon just to listen. May falls asleep. Annalise pretends to weep. You stay home, sipping iced lemonade and enjoying the irony. Here's your historical thread. As saloons grew richer, many madams turned to luxury imports to elevate their establishments. They weren't just selling flesh, they were selling fantasy. Fine furniture, imported liquor, even marble bathtubs became common in upscale brothels by the late 1800s. The line between sin and society blurred when the chandelier started going up. Your quirky fact tonight? One madam in Portland kept a functioning indoor fountain that flowed with champagne, at least on Fridays. No one remembers her name. Everyone remembers the fountain. You won't build a fountain, but you do bring in mirrors. Tall, gold-framed ones, shipped in wagons wrapped in horsehair and blankets. The girls see themselves differently in them. Taller, more important, that matters. You can't run a place like this with women who feel disposable. They have to feel like queens, or at least courtesans with court-worthy wardrobes. The opium becomes a quiet side trade. You're careful, very careful. Just a few clients, only behind locked doors, no open use on the floor. A doctor from San Francisco, travelling through on business, introduces you into a new blend. Says it softens the mind but sharpens the conversation. He tries to give you some for free. You don't take it, you buy it. On your terms, that's the difference. You're playing a longer game now. You're no longer just running a saloon. You're creating a place where the rich feel safe being themselves. A terrifying and lucrative niche. And they're bringing money with them. A lot of it. Some of it clean, most of it not. One night, a man from New York arrives wearing a coat so fine it makes the air feel poor. He asks for a private room and orders a bottle of your best brandy. Then he asks if you know any girls who can speak politics. You send in Beatrice. She's read 3 newspapers every day since she was 16. An hour later, he leaves smiling, muttering something about Senate seats and how, finally, someone out here gets it. Beatrice hands you a folded note. It contains a name and a sum of money. You burn the name and pocket the sum. Rosalind, watching from the upstairs balcony, nods. You're turning into something, she says. What? She exhales smoke through her nose. An empire. It doesn't feel like one. Not yet. You still walk the floors each night, check the bottles, straighten the girls' hair ribbons when they come loose. You still lock your door from the inside, but something's shifting. You hear it in how the banker says your name now, how the sheriff doesn't meet your eyes anymore, how the men in suits ask for your time instead of assuming they already own it. Of course, the higher you climb, the further there is to fall. You haven't forgotten that. Not for a second. And you still remember Josephine. You wonder if she'd recognise this version of you. The one who serves cocktails over chipped ice and sells imported perfume in tiny wax-sealed vials. The one who negotiates with opium merchants by candlelight while girls giggle through French lessons downstairs. The one who wears silk not because it's beautiful, but because it reminds people they can't touch you. You think maybe she would. She was always good at spotting power dressed up like luxury. And that's what this all is. Not indulgence. Camouflage. The fire comes in the dead of night, as it always does. Fire doesn't announce itself, waits until everyone's off guard, until the last poker chip's been stacked, until the girls are laughing barefoot upstairs and you're sitting at your desk with your boots off and your hair unpinned. rereading a letter from a man who thinks he knows you because he bought you brandy once. You're half a sentence in when the first scream breaks the silence, then the pounding of boots on stairs, followed by that terrible, unmistakable crackle. Wood splitting, flames feeding, air shifting like it's holding its breath. You're moving before you know you are. Barefoot down the hallway, shouting orders, get the girls out, use the side stairs, not the main ones. You remember the layout like you built it with your own hands. You grab the water bucket by instinct, though you know it's a joke. The Canary has 2 stories of seasoned pine and velvet curtains. The fire won't ask permission. Outside, snowflakes mix with cinders. The street glowing orange like a lantern in a dust storm. The back corner of the saloon is already gone, flames licking the sky, painting shadows that flicker and dance like devils. The shed with the ice, melted into useless puddles. The silk, gone. The opium, doesn't matter. You count the girls, 8, 2 missing. Ooh, you run back in. Rosalind grabs your arm hard. You'll die in there! You shake her off. I've died in worse places. The smoke hits you halfway through the parlour, thick, choking, all claw and heat. You wrap a wet rag over your face and duck low, shouting names, coughing so hard it feels like your ribs will crack. You find Annalise dragging Beatrice, who's half conscious, her leg pinned under part of the collapsed ceiling. You don't hesitate. You lift the beam with a grunt that tears something in your shoulder, and haul Beatrice up over your back like she weighs nothing. You don't even remember getting out. 1 second you're dragging her, the next you're on the ground outside, coughing up ash, hair singed, skin blistered but alive. You stare up at the sky, stars dimmed by smoke. The Canary burns, and you watch every last timber go black. The town gathers, of course. Not to help, but to gawk. You hear whispers, accident, sabotage, judgment from God. One of the reform ladies is already praying aloud, pretending to weep. The sheriff shows up late, breath smelling of last night's bourbon, offering weak condolences and weaker questions. Could have been a lamp knocked over, he mutters. Could have been someone with a match, you snap. There's no sign of forced entry, no threats left behind, but the fire didn't start small, it started big, fast, controlled, which tells you one thing, this wasn't carelessness. This was targeted. You try to sleep the next night on a cot in the stables, Beatrice's soft moans drifting from across the room. You don't. Your hands shake when you touch anything warm, your lungs still itch. And in your chest, something's cracked open. Not fear, not grief, something meaner. You rebuild. Because of course you do, but not the same way. You buy stone this time, not wood. You hire a crew from Carson City who know how to mix mortar that lasts and lay bricks tight enough to keep even lightning out. The new building rises slower. Every board, every beam measured twice and nailed 3 times. The upstairs quarters are smaller but reinforced. The kitchen is fireproof. You even install a copper alarm bell, rigged with a string that runs through every floor. You think of it as a new heartbeat. The girls help, cleaning what's left, salvaging what they can. Rosaline oversees the design. You let her make the new parlour darker, quieter, closer to the way she likes things. You trust her taste now, maybe more than your own. When she suggests leaving the name, the Canary, you pause, consider it, then agree. Not because it fits, because it reminds. And here's your historical thread for the night. Fires in the Wild West weren't just common, they were expected. Between kerosene lamps, dry wood and careless drunks, a saloon could be reduced to ash in hours. Some towns burned every year, and more than a few madams rebuilt not once but 2 or 3 times. The smart ones used stone and brick. The paranoid ones hired guards with fire axes, and the lucky ones survived long enough to tell the difference. Your quirky fact: one madam in Deadwood reportedly employed a fire cat, a scruffy orange tom she believed could sense smoke before anyone else. The cat would bolt out the door minutes before a fire started, yowling like hell. She credited him with saving her life 3 times. He died of old age with a full belly and a gold collar. You think about getting a cat, maybe, if things ever settle. But right now you're hunting, because someone lit the match. And you don't believe in coincidences. You ask questions, quietly. Pay for information with silver and kisses and threats. You hear things. One of the rival saloon owners hired new muscle last month. A stranger was seen behind the stables the night before. The preacher's nephew just bought a suspiciously large plot of land right next to yours. None of it sticks, but all of it stinks. You bring Tilden in for a drink unannounced. He sits across from you in the unfinished parlour, eyebrows raised at the soot still clinging to the window frame. "You think I did it?" he asks. You shake your head. "You don't burn things, you gut them with paperwork." He smiles. You don't. That night Rosalind sits beside you on the roof of the partially rebuilt Canary, feet dangling over the edge like you're both kids playing fort. "They're trying to erase you," she says. "They'll have to try harder." She glances sideways. "You scared?" You light a cigarette with hands that don't shake anymore. Terrified. The wind tugs at your hair, and somewhere below hammers ring out in the dark. The Canary will rise again, but so will your enemies. So will the fire. And this time you'll be ready. She's laid out so carefully you almost believe she's sleeping. Hair brushed smooth, eyes closed like someone placed coins on them just moments ago. One hand resting gently on her chest and the other curled near the edge of the sheet as if she'd been about to reach for something. Her name was Inez, 17, maybe 18. Came to you 3 weeks ago with a letter of introduction from an old contact in Abilene, a stitched-up bag full of patch stockings, and a laugh too bright for this business. You'd only just started teaching her how to pour drinks and steer lecherous hands without ever getting touched. Now she's dead, and no one knows why. There's no blood, no bruises, no signs of a struggle, just a body found cold and silent in her upstairs room. Door locked from the inside, the window slightly cracked. You knew this day would come. You've told the girls it would. Not everyone makes it. Sometimes a heart gives out. Sometimes a sickness hides too deep to spot. But this doesn't sit right. Inez didn't drink. She wasn't using. She didn't complain of anything more than a sore ankle. But something stole her breath in the dark and left no footprints. You call the doctor. Not Tolliver, not anymore. You've replaced him with a real physician, someone from the city wearing a long black coat and square spectacles, always scribbling in a notebook like he's gathering evidence for a book he'll never write. He pokes and prods, checks her pulse for the 5th time, lifts her eyelids, sniffs her mouth. "Poison, maybe," he says at last. "Or something rare, something quiet." You clench your jaw. "Intentional?" He shrugs. "Could be. Or something she took, thinking it was medicine. Something old, something, That's not good enough. You need answers. You spend the next 2 days doing what you do best, listening. You talk to the girls, to the staff, to the bartender who says she looked pale the night before, to the cook who remembers she didn't eat her dinner. You rifle through her belongings, careful not to break the small dignity of her things. You find a locket with no picture, a half-written letter home, a pouch of dried lavender, and then, tucked under her mattress, a bottle. No label, just amber glass and a cork stopper. You uncork it and immediately catch a whiff of something sharp, metallic, and faintly sweet. You don't need the doctor to tell you this isn't perfume. You confront the girls that night in the main parlour, with the doors locked and the lamps turned low. They gather close, wary, mourning, confused. Inez didn't die in her sleep, you tell them. She was poisoned. Maybe not on purpose, but maybe not by mistake either. Silence. You hold up the bottle. "This. Anyone seen it before?" No one answers. Then May steps forward, eyes on the floor. "She bought something from the apothecary," she says. "Said it was for nerves. Said it helped her sleep." You nod. "Did you see her use it?" "Oh, but she said she had dreams, nightmares. Woke up screaming." Your stomach tightens. You've seen that before, you've heard it. A girl too young, too shaken by something she wouldn't talk about. Trying to keep it together, trying to sleep. So she turns to a bottle with no instructions and no warning. You visit the apothecary the next morning. It's a small place, half shop, half graveyard for expired remedies. The man behind the counter is older than dust and just as dry. You ask him about the bottle. Show it to him. He squints. Tonic for hysteria. Used to sell it by the dozen. Mostly laudanum and a few other things not exactly safe. Did you tell her that? He shrugs. Did she ask? You want to slap him? You don't. But your voice drops low, sharp. If I hear you sold that to another girl without explaining the risk, I'll put you out of business. And if that doesn't work, I'll just put you out. He doesn't blink, but he doesn't argue either. Outside, the wind cuts like judgment. You return to the Canary and find the undertaker already waiting. You've prepared a box for Inez, a small one, modest but dignified. You've paid for her plot yourself, had her boots cleaned and laced, her hair pinned. You write to the name on the letter she'd carried. Her aunt, you think. Whether the woman receives it or not, whether she writes back or not, you do it anyway. Rosalind stands beside you at the gravesite, arms folded tight. The other girls come too, coats pulled close, hands buried in pockets. You say nothing as she's lowered. Some things don't need words. Historically, deaths like Inezu's weren't rare. In saloons and brothels across the West, girls overdosed, collapsed from exhaustion, drank the wrong mixture, or simply died because no one listened when they said something felt wrong. Poison was common, both accidental and deliberate. Some madams kept ledgers of the girls who died under their roofs, quiet memorials or cautionary tales. Others buried the truth with the body. And tonight's strange detail. In one Nevada brothel, the madam kept a silk ribbon for each girl who passed, tied them to the rafters in the attic like ghosts watching over the floor. No one was allowed to talk about them, but everyone knew what they meant. You don't tie ribbons, you remember faces, and you remember lessons. You start asking more questions. You meet with the doctor twice a week. You teach the girls what laudanum smells like, what not to take, how to read labels, how to say no to strange bottles and pretty lies. You build a small medicine cabinet of your own, clean, organised, stocked with what's safe. You find a midwife in the hills and hire her to visit once a month. She's gruff and opinionated and calls everyone child no matter their age. Perfect. You post a new rule, written in your own hand. No unknown medicine. No secrets about pain. No dying alone. The girls read it, and they listen. Because Inez is gone, and no one wants to be next. That night in your quarters, you light a single candle and sit in silence, staring at the unmarked bottle you never returned. You keep it on your shelf, as a reminder, not of death, but of neglect, and that's something you won't allow, not in your house, not ever again. You hang the closed for private game sign on the side room door around 9 o'clock, just as the piano winds into its third round of Buffalo Gals. No one blinks. The regulars know it means high stakes are on. Most assume it's just another round of wealthy cattlemen and shady lawyers trying to cheat each other into another mortgage. But what they don't know, and what you've worked hard to keep under wraps, is that this game is run entirely by women. You call it the parlour game, though it's less about poker and more about performance. Beatrice deals, May runs drinks and distractions, and the players, well, they're your best-kept secret. They come from other towns, ride in by night, hide their faces with scarves or hats, and sit at your table like they've been doing it all their lives. Because they have. You found them one by one, through letters, whispers, and a lucky game in Carson, where a woman named Viola cleaned out a train inspector and never even lifted her glass. You brought her in, she brought another, and now, once a week, your side room becomes a battlefield dressed in silk, where every chip hides a knife and every smile masks a calculation. Tonight there are 6 at the table. 3 in lace, 2 in corseted jackets, 1 in a pair of trousers so sharp she could probably slice bread just by sitting. The buy-in's steep. The rules are stricter than a church choir. No drinks past 3 fingers, no flirting during hands, and no men allowed. Not even to watch. You run it like a general runs a siege, quietly, precisely, and with no tolerance for drama. The pot's already full when you step into the room, the door shutting softly behind you, muffling the sound of laughter from the main hall. Beatrice shuffles like a machine. Viola nods to you, but doesn't stop calculating odds under her breath. You just take a seat near the stove, lean back and observe. The stakes tonight aren't just money. One woman's betting a deed, another, a shipment of silver bars that may or may not be stolen. You don't ask, you don't want to know. It started small, of course. One game, then another. But now it's growing. You've had inquiries from Denver. A telegram from a woman in Santa Fe who signs her name with a spade symbol and nothing else. You're building something here. Something rarer than a saloon, more elusive than gold. You're building a network. Women gambling without men. Women winning without men. It's subtle, it's slow, but it's real. Rosaline doesn't entirely approve. She sits in on a game once, says it feels like playing chess in a powder keg. One man finds out about this, she warns, and they'll try to shut it down or take it over. You nod, and that's why we keep it quiet. She shrugs. Quiet doesn't stay quiet long in towns like this. She's right, you already know that. Which is why you've started collecting insurance. One man who saw too much and whispered about it to the wrong girl woke up with a broken thumb and no memory of how it happened. Another tried to bluff his way into the game wearing a wig and rouge. You let him sit for one hand. Beatrice cleaned him out in 20 minutes. You escorted him to the door personally, pressed a small knife into his hand, and told him if he ever mentioned the parlour game again, you'd make sure he lost more than his pride next time. He left town that night. Here's your historical touchstone. Gambling wasn't just a man's world in the Wild West. There were female card sharks, dice throwers, and blackjack hustlers, though most kept low profiles to avoid harassment or worse. Some madams ran underground poker nights specifically for women, where fortunes were won, lost, and passed hand to hand in satin gloves. And the quirky bit? A known gambler named Lottie Deno reportedly used tea leaves to pick her cards and wore a snake bracelet as a good luck charm. No one ever caught her cheating, but plenty claimed she could smell a bluff like whiskey on breath. You believe it. You've seen that look in Viola's eyes more than once. Tonight's game ends just past midnight. One woman walks away with a small chest of jewellery. Another tears up a contract right at the table, laughing like a woman who just burned her last bridge and liked the view. No one loses what they can't afford, that's your rule. But some women walk out of that room lighter, freer, changed. It's not just about the cards, it's about having a room where the rules finally make sense, where no one touches unless asked, where silence isn't suspicion, and power doesn't smell like sweat and bourbon. You walk Beatrice out into the alley behind the Canary, the night air crisp and full of wood smoke. She lights a cigarette, blows out a long, satisfied exhale. "They're asking about a monthly league," she says. "Something bigger, winners from different towns, rotate locations." You raise an eyebrow. "A travelling parlour?" She nods. You think it over. It's dangerous, it's logistically insane, it's perfect. "I'll need names," you say. "You'll have them." You head back inside, mind already ticking through possibilities. Where to host, who to trust, how to transport chips without drawing attention. You'll need disguises, alternate identities, possibly even aliases for the girls. You'll need maps, passwords, signals. You're not just running a saloon anymore, you're running a society. And like any good secret society, it starts small, just enough to feel invisible. But you know better. You've seen what happens when women stop asking for permission and start dealing their own hands. It doesn't stay invisible for long. And when it shows up on the map, you'll be the one holding the deck. The Canary has rules. You've carved them into wood, whispered them into ears, stitched them into the very floorboards. No violence without cause, no customers past closing, no touching without a clear yes. But sometimes, even with all your effort, all your warnings, all your quiet threats, someone tests the rules just to see if you're bluffing. And tonight, someone finds out the hard way that you never are. He's drunk, of course, they always are. Comes in just after the dinner hour, stinking of whiskey and mule sweat, bragging to no one in particular about how he once put a bullet in a man for sneezing too loud. He's a minor name, grew up near Deadwood, passed through Carson City, probably thinks his reputation is a shield. You let him sit, let him spend, let him run his mouth until the whiskey loosens him into something sloppier, something dangerous. And it happens when he grabs May's wrist. Not hard, but hard enough. You see it from across the room, his fingers latching on, her flinch, the way she straightens and doesn't yank away because she's been trained not to escalate. But her eyes find yours, and that's all it takes. You cross the floor slowly. No rush, no yelling. "Let go," you say quietly. The man squints up at you. "What's it to you? I own the place, and she didn't invite you." He lets go, but not all the way. There is still a challenge in his grip, the kind of squeeze that says, "I could if I wanted to." And then, just to make it worse, he smirks and says, "She's just a whore. Ain't she yours to command?" You hit him before your brain even registers the decision. One sharp strike with the butt of your pistol right across the cheekbone. He collapses into the table, blood pouring from his nose, and the room goes dead silent. Not from shock, from approval, because they've seen this play before, and they know you never pull a weapon unless you intend to use it. You stand over him, voice flat. "You don't touch my girls, not ever, not with your hands, not with your mouth, not with your stinking thoughts. You don't look at them unless they say you can." He groans, muttering something about knowing people, about being important. You crouch, grab his chin, and force his face toward yours. "Tell your people I said hello." You let him limp out, trailing blood and pride behind him like a wounded animal. You could have had him locked up, could have had him beaten worse, but this sends a message, not just to him, to everyone, because every so often you have to remind the town exactly who they are dealing with. Violence in your world is complicated. You don't want it, but you've accepted it. You've been trained by necessity, not joy. You own a shotgun, but you keep it hidden in a hollowed-out piano. You know how to use a knife, but you prefer threats. Cleaner. But when the time comes to act, you act fast. And when it's done, you don't apologise. That night, you gather the girls in the back room. Pour drinks, sit with them in a circle like it's story time, even though your hands are still shaking. I need to know, you say. Any of you ever feel unsafe? Not just tonight. Ever. Even for a second. They're quiet. May shakes her head first. Then Beatrice. Then the others. You wait. You look each of them in the eye. They nod. That's how you know the rules are working. But you also know how thin those rules are. So you start making adjustments. You hire a trainer, an old scout who once taught army recruits, now mostly teaches women how to stab where it hurts. You bring him in twice a week, pay him double, and make every girl attend. No exceptions. They learn to fight in petticoats. They learn to scream without panic. They learn pressure points and bottle techniques and how to turn a corset pin into a weapon. The town gossips, of course. Don't know what they're building in there, one man mutters at the general store, but it sure ain't ladies. You smile when you hear it. Exactly. Your historical fact tonight. Some of the most successful madams of the West had private security forces, armed, loyal, and trained. But what's less known is that many madams also taught their girls to defend themselves. In cities like Dodge, Tombstone, and Leadville, working women carried weapons in their garters, hats, boots, and, yes, parasols. One even reportedly kept a derringer hidden in her bustle. The police often turned a blind eye, especially if those women paid their taxes on time. Quirky bit? One brothel in Colorado offered self-defense Tuesdays in the garden out back. It started as a joke but quickly turned into a real weekly event drawing in women from nearby towns. They trained with bricks, shoes, and even candlesticks. The madam claimed the best weapon was whatever you could reach first. You embrace that philosophy. Soon the Canary feels like a fortress. Not because it's closed off, but because it's confident. Customers start acting different. More polite, more careful, more deliberate. They tip better. They ask instead of assume. The bolder ones still test the limits, but they don't get far. You've seen how power shifts when women stop playing nice. Rosaline notices it too. You've turned them into wolves, she says one evening, sipping from a teacup that definitely doesn't contain tea. Good, you reply. They need teeth. She nods. Just make sure they don't bite each other. It's a fair warning. When you teach women to fight, you also have to teach them why not to. You set boundaries. You check tempers. You build trust alongside muscle. Because power without direction? That's just fire with no lantern. The following week, a young woman from Virginia City walks into your saloon. She's bruised, carrying a bag, and holding herself like she expects to be hit. You offer her a seat, a drink, a job, and she looks at you like you're crazy. Why would you help me? She asks. You shrug. 'Cause someone once helped me. She stares, then nods. You call May over quietly. Teach her, you say. Everything. And May does. Because at the Canary, that's what you do now. You teach each other. You protect each other. And if someone doesn't like it, you dare them to say it to your face. You hear her before you see her. Boots scraping wood, deliberate and heavy, the kind of walk that means business. The front doors swing open like they've been rehearsed, and there she is. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a coat made from something with too many teeth, wearing a hat 3 sizes too bold for anyone but her. A rifle slung across her back, a revolver on her hip, and a scar like a cracked smile running from cheek to jaw. You know exactly who she is. Everyone does. Clara Crane, sometimes called Cannon Clara, sometimes just Crane, depending on how many teeth the speaker still has in their mouth. A bounty hunter, a gambler, and, depending on the rumour, a killer who only shoots men who lie. You lean against the bar, arms folded, watching her scan the room. Her eyes skip over the piano, the girls, the laughter, and land straight on you. Madam, she says with a nod. Not a question, not a greeting, just a statement of fact. Miss Cray, you return cool as iced gin. What brings you to my corner of civilization? Need a bed, a drink, and a few questions answered. You don't flinch, you just gesture to a corner booth. You can have 2 out of 3. She sits. You join her. Crane is one of those rare creatures that even the sheriff won't tangle with. She's got more legal exemptions than a railroad tycoon, and the kind of presence that makes most men forget how to blink. She was wanted once, years back. Some said she shot a judge, others said she was a judge. Whatever the truth, the legends have made her bulletproof. You serve her yourself. Whiskey, no glass, just the bottle and a nod of respect. Looking for someone, she says, then produces a name, and it nearly knocks the air out of your lungs. Josephine. You play it smooth. The game's familiar now. You've had practice. Can't say I've seen her, you reply. Name rings a bell, though. Was she trouble? Depends, Crane says, lifting the bottle to her lips. She took something, or someone, maybe both. I was paid not to care which. You want to ask who paid, you don't. That would be too obvious. What's your angle, you ask instead. Survival, she replies. Same as everyone else. She stays for 3 days, rents the corner room, doesn't flirt, doesn't drink too much, doesn't let her guard down, not even when she's asleep. One of the girls swears she caught Crane cleaning her rifle blindfolded. Another claims she saw Crane read a telegram upside down while talking to the telegraph operator. You believe both. You keep your distance mostly. Watch her work from the shadows. She doesn't push, doesn't kick doors open. She just listens, pays children for stories, watches drunks talk too much, nods along to gossip like she's just passing time, and she never forgets a detail. On the third night she calls you upstairs, not in a threatening way, in the way two women who know too much have to meet eventually. Her room smells like oil and gunmetal. A map is spread across the desk, covered in pins and notes. You spot the trail, your old town, the logging camp near Fort Scott, a ghost town by the Nevada line. She's following something, and now you're part of it. You knew her, she says plainly. Briefly. She ever mentioned the name Cyrus Dane? You go still. Cyrus Dane, the man with the money, the man who sent Tilden, the man who never shows his face but has a dozen deputies and 1,000 enemies. Josephine ran from him, you realise, and maybe she had more than just secrets in her satchel when she left. You decide to tell Crane the truth. Some of it. She was scared, said she was being followed. I offered her a place. She left anyway. Did you know what she carried? No, you lie. Crane stares at you for a long time, then finally she nods once. If she comes through again, you tell her to go east, not west. East. Why? Because west is death. She leaves before dawn and no goodbye. Just her empty room and the scent of danger still hanging in the sheets. You sit on the bed after she's gone, stare at the place where her map was. Think about Josephine. Think about Cyrus Dane. Think about how deep this rabbit hole goes and how close you are to falling in again. Your historical moment for the night? Bounty hunters in the Wild West didn't always play by the law. Some were deputized, others were just tolerated. A few were women, rare, dangerous, and often more effective than their male counterparts because people underestimated them. The smartest ones didn't shoot unless absolutely necessary. Their weapon was knowledge, and the strange detail. One female bounty hunter once wore a full priest's robe for 3 years to move through towns undetected. She caught 27 criminals without ever firing a shot. Said the disguise saved more blood than bullets ever could. Crane doesn't wear robes, but she wears that same untouchable aura. And now she knows Josephine passed through you, which means Cyrus Dane will know soon too. You spend the next few days reinforcing the saloon's back exit. You update your ledger with coded names. You send Mollie south with a message meant for someone who still owes you a favour in El Paso. Because things are moving now. Not just around you, through you. Josephine lit a fuse you can't put out. And now the fire's coming fast. You hear her before you see her. Boots scraping wood, deliberate and heavy. The kind of walk that means business. The front doors swing open like they've been rehearsed. And there she is. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a coat made from something with too many teeth, wearing a hat 3 sizes too bold for anyone but her. A rifle slung across her back, a revolver on her hip, and a scar like a cracked smile running from cheek to jaw. You know exactly who she is. Everyone does. Clara Crane, sometimes called Cannon Clara, sometimes just Crane, depending on how many teeth the speaker still has in their mouth. A bounty hunter, a gambler, and, depending on the rumour, a killer who only shoots men who lie. You lean against the bar, arms folded, watching her scan the room. Her eyes skip over the piano, the girls, the laughter, and land straight on you. "Madam," she says with a nod. Not a question, not a greeting, just a statement of fact. "Miss Crane," you return, cool as iced gin. "What brings you to my corner of civilization?" "Need a bed, a drink, and a few questions answered." You don't flinch, you just gesture to a corner booth. "You can have 2 out of 3. She sits. You join her. Crane is one of those rare creatures that even the sheriff won't tangle with. She's got more legal exemptions than a railroad tycoon, and the kind of presence that makes most men forget how to blink. She was wanted once, years back. Some said she shot a judge, others said she was a judge, whatever the truth. The legends have made her bulletproof, and you serve her yourself. Whiskey, no glass, just the bottle and a nod of respect. "Looking for someone," she says, then produces a name, and it nearly knocks the air out of your lungs. "Josephine." You play it smooth. "The game's familiar now. You've had practice." "Can't say I've seen her," you reply. "Name rings a bell, though. Was she trouble?" "Depends," Crane says, lifting the bottle to her lips. "She took something, or someone, maybe both. I was paid not to care which." You want to ask who paid, you don't. That would be too obvious. "What's your angle?" you ask instead. "Survival," she replies. "Same as everyone else." She stays for 3 days, rents the corner room, and doesn't flirt, doesn't drink too much, doesn't let her guard down, not even when she's asleep. One of the girls swears she caught Crane cleaning her rifle blindfolded. Another claims she saw Crane read a telegram upside down while talking to the telegraph operator. You believe both. You keep your distance mostly. Watch her work from the shadows. She doesn't push, doesn't kick doors open. She just listens. Pays children for stories. Watches drunks talk too much. Nods along to gossip like she's just passing time. And she never forgets a detail. On the 3rd night she calls you upstairs. Not in a threatening way, in the way 2 women who know too much have to meet eventually. Her room smells like oil and gunmetal. A map is spread across the desk, covered in pins and notes. You spot the trail, your old town, the logging camp near Fort Scott, a ghost town by the Nevada line. She's following something, and now you're part of it. "You knew her," she says plainly. "Briefly." "She ever mentioned the name Cyrus Dane?" You go still. Cyrus Dane. The man with the money. The man who sent Tilden. The man who never shows his face but has a dozen deputies and 1,000 enemies. Josephine ran from him, you realise. And maybe she had more than just secrets in her satchel when she left. You decide to tell Crane the truth. Some of it. "She was scared. Said she was being followed. I offered her a place. She left anyway." "Did you know what she carried?" "No." You lie. Crane stares at you for a long time. Then finally she nods once. "If she comes through again, you tell her to go east, not west. East." "Why?" "Because west is death." She leaves before dawn. No goodbye. Just her empty room and the scent of danger still hanging in the sheets. You sit on the bed after she's gone, stare at the place where her map was. Think about Josephine. Think about Cyrus Dane. Think about how deep this rabbit hole goes and how close you are to falling in again. Your historical moment for the night. Bounty hunters in the Wild West didn't always play by the law. Some were deputized, others were just tolerated. A few were women, rare, dangerous, and often more effective than their male counterparts because people underestimated them. The smartest ones didn't shoot unless absolutely necessary. Their weapon was knowledge. And the strange detail? One female bounty hunter once wore a full priest's robe for 3 years to move through towns undetected. She caught 27 criminals without ever firing a shot. Said the disguise saved more blood than bullets ever could. Crane doesn't wear robes, but she wears that same untouchable aura. And now she knows Josephine passed through you, which means Cyrus Dane will know soon too. You spend the next few days reinforcing the saloon's back exit. You update your ledger with coded names. You send Mollie south with a message meant for someone who still owes you a favour in El Paso. Because things are moving now, not just around you, through you. Josephine lit a fuse you can't put out. And now the fire's coming fast. It starts with silence. The kind that feels too deep for a town, too wide for a night that should be humming with poker shuffles and spilled drinks. No horses clop by, no laughter leaks through the shutters, no piano keystrokes echo across the floorboards. Even the wind has stopped. as if the air itself is holding its breath. You're at the bar, polishing a glass that doesn't need polishing, staring at the mirror behind the bottles, your own reflection, tired but iron stiff, jaw set, eyes scanning the room for the first crack. Rosalind sits near the stairs, sharpening a letter opener, which you both know is more symbolic than functional. The girls are scattered through the saloon, acting like everything's normal. Playing cards, pouring drinks, laughing at half-heard jokes. It's theatre now, carefully choreographed, because everyone's waiting. When they come, it's not subtle. 5 riders, 3 wagons, 2 more on foot cutting across the main road like a dark ribbon unravelling. They don't wear badges. They don't need to. Their clothes are pressed, their boots polished. You catch a glint of steel under a coat, holsters smooth, clean. These aren't outlaws. They're employees. Hired hands from a place where death is organised and legal fees are prepaid. They don't knock. They just push the saloon doors open and step inside one by one, boots thudding against your wooden floors like a drumbeat. Leading them is the same man from before, the one with the drawl, the clean teeth, the shark smile. But now he's flanked by 2 others, one carries a lockbox, the other a ledger. The man sets a paper on the bar. "This is a formal notice of seizure," he says. "Mr. Dane believes property of value is hidden on these premises. He intends to retrieve it." You don't even look at the paper. "You tell Mr. Dane," you say softly, "that I bury what I own." The man smiles again, a little tighter now. "If you're thinking of violence, I suggest you reconsider. We've been authorised." You pour a shot of whiskey, take it without blinking, and set the glass down slowly. "Good," you say. "So have I." Behind you, Rosalind stands up. The girls move in quiet unison. Beatrice near the door, Mollie stepping behind the piano, May lifting a broom that's not just a broom. Each one with her own role. Not fighters by trade, but trained. Resolved. "You really want to make this ugly?" the man asks, though there's a tremor in it now. You lean over the bar close enough that he can smell the powder and the peppermint on your breath. "I don't want anything," you whisper, "but I'll gladly give you something to remember me by." That's when the standoff begins. The men stiffen, hands inch toward weapons. But you know they're weighing it, calculating loss, wondering how much Cyrus Dane is willing to spend in bodies. Because this isn't just a building, this is a trap. Every door accounted for, every alley watched, every bottle on the shelf could be a fire in disguise. And then, just when you think the trigger's coming, a sound! Boots, just one pair, slow, measured, a silhouette at the door. And then she steps inside. Josephine, older, leaner, wearing clothes too fine for the trail and eyes that haven't slept in weeks. But it's her. You'd know her even if you were blind. She looks at the men, then at you, then pulls a small leather-bound book from her satchel and sets it on the bar. "I'm the one he wants," she says, "and this is what he's after." No one moves, not even you. Josephine turns to you slowly. "It's not worth it. This place, these people. I didn't mean to drag you into this." You don't respond. You just pick up the book, thumb through it. Pages of names, transactions, coordinates, aliases. It's not a ledger. It's a map of sins, Cyrus Dane's sins. The kind that could sink more than just a man, maybe a railroad, maybe a whole city. The man reaches for it. You slam the book shut and tuck it into your coat. Josephine speaks again. "He'll never stop. He'll keep coming. Take the deal." You shake your head. "I don't make deals with ghosts." The man steps forward, hand twitching, and that's when the first shot rings out. You don't see who fires first. Maybe it's Rosaline, maybe it's Mollie, maybe it's you, but suddenly the saloon is thunder and glass and firelight. Bottles explode, chairs shatter, and the piano falls silent forever with one final discordant wail. Your girls move like they've done this before. You fire, reload, duck, shout commands, someone screams, someone falls, but not your own. You take a bullet through the sleeve, graze your arm, blood, pain, nothing fatal, and then silence again. When it clears, 3 of Dane's men are down, the rest retreat, limping and cursing, dragging the wounded behind them. You don't chase, you don't need to. The canary still stands, barely. Windows cracked, bar scorched, blood drying on the floor, but standing. Josephine is sitting in a corner booth, pale and shaking. You walk to her, kneel, take her hands. Why now, you ask? She doesn't meet your eyes. Because I couldn't run anymore. Rosalind walks over and picks up the discarded paper from the bar. Laughs. You think this counts as a seizure notice? You should have hired a lawyer who's been to a saloon. You almost laugh too. Almost. Later that night, after the bodies are gone and the saloon is patched as best it can be, you burn the ledger. Not all of it, just enough. You send the rest with a rider, sealed in the box, bound for a judge you trust just enough to hope. You keep Josephine upstairs, not under arrest, not under guard, just home. The girls sleep with weapons near their beds that night. So do you, but you also sleep knowing something has shifted. Because tonight was the night they tried to break you. And they failed. Again. Your historical truth? Some women did lose everything, burned out, buried, erased, but others survived because they refused to break. They built stronger, struck harder, and dared anyone to call them fragile. They weren't saints, but they weren't victims either. And the final quirky fact? There's a saloon in New Mexico where, once a year, the staff reenacts the one night in 1887 when a group of working women fought off 7 armed men and won. No names are recorded, no medals awarded. But the legend says the floorboards still carry the imprint of boots that stood their ground. Tonight yours do too, and they always will. Wind down. So now you sit on the porch of the Canary, your canary. Boots kicked it up, arm in a sling, but your glass full and your saloon still standing. The air's warm tonight, the kind of heat that presses gentle against your sin instead of clawing at it, and the girls are laughing again inside, real laughter, not the performative kind you've lived with for too long. It's the sound of people who have fought, who have lost, who have survived, and somehow managed to hold on to themselves in the middle of it all. Josephine's still here, helping with books and boiling coffee strong enough to revive the dead. She doesn't talk much about what happened, about Dane, or the road she took to get back. But sometimes, when you're both quiet and the night is soft, she'll mention a town or a lie, or a moment that still wakes her up sweating. You never press, you just listen. You know what it means to carry ghosts. The Canary's been rebuilt more times than you can count, but this last time, it feels different. Stronger. Not just stone and nails, something in the people. The way the girls walk taller now. The way the regulars speak your name with respect instead of thinly veiled suspicion. The sheriff even sent flowers last week, though Rosalind's convinced they were stolen off someone else's grave. You kept the bullet you dug out to the bar. Polished it. Set it in a glass box next to a silk ribbon and a key with no door. Reminders, all of them, of what you've done, of what you've kept safe, of the line you held when everything tried to shove you off it. Out east, the railroads are still coming. Civilization, progress, and all that shiny rot. But out here, in your corner of the world, the fire didn't win. The wolves didn't eat you. You made it through. And just maybe, next time someone says the West was won by men in badges and boots, you'll smile, take a sip of that whiskey and say, "No, darling, it was won by women who didn't flinch."